Chapter 171. The light that was emitted spread out instantly, and golden cracks appeared in the protective layer that covered the tower that reached the sky. Snap! It cancelled out the power it came into contact with, and turned into stars, and disappeared into the air. Agatha's chaotic mind suddenly became clear, and the instant loss of the transcendent power made her face pale. Agatha finally reacted. This is not an illusion. Her defense field was really shattered. What frightened her even more was this familiar offsetting force. This was Moore's ability. She had been working with him for many years. Except for himself, no one knew his power better than Agatha. But wasn't he dead? Agatha looked up at the sky. Except for the eyes originally arranged near the tower, there was no suspicious person. She pressed the link of the communication equipment and said to Bai Chung, who was directing the action on the other side, "The enemy invaded, and my domain was broken." "What?" Bai Chung paused. His calm voice was full of disbelief. "How could your domain be broken? What means did the other party use?" "It was Moore's equivalent offset." "What are you kidding? Isn't Moore dead?" "I want to know what happened too," Agatha growled. And as she spoke, she entered the interior of the tower. After the power was offset, she could no longer open the original large-scale defense domain. Even if she opened it forcibly, it would not last long. She had to take new measures and display a small-scale defense domain inside the tower. During this time, the other party must have entered the tower. Moore is not dead? Moore betrayed the tower? Both are impossible. His vital signs disappeared. Thinking that his body has not been found yet, Agatha's head flashed with a white light. She asked, "Has the body of Ming Xian and Wei Siyuan in Shelter 004 not been found yet? Why are you asking this now? What does it have to do with the current situation?" Bai Cheng's voice stopped abruptly, and he also connected everything. There is only one possibility: that an alien creature under Fang Zhou can obtain the ability of the other party by obtaining the body of the transcendent. So that Mi Li's black hole, that there is no time to resist, and Moore's death are explained. The arc may also have Ming Xian's time rewind. Bai Chung felt cold sweat all over his body. He supported his hands on the console and looked at the hundreds of display screens embedded in the entire wall in front of him. The center showed the progress of the defense system upgrade. He had only walked less than halfway. "Jacob, is there any suspicious person?" "Sorry, Director Bai Chung." No unregistered personnel were detected. Beside him were his busy subordinates. After hearing his words, they couldn't help but look at him. Bai Chung felt like a thorn in his back. He clenched his fists. Jacob didn't find her existence. She must be nearby. The eye may have been invaded. "Agatha, deploy the firewall." Agatha looked worried and tried to deploy a firewall towards the eye above. Bai Chung continued to order, "We also need to deploy a high-level defense area. We can't let her get to those floors. You know, there are all alien creatures in there. If those things are released, or become her things, be prepared." "Bai Chung." Agatha's voice was cold as a dregs. "If the other party can use Moore's ability once, they can use it a second time. I will arrange people to guard those floors. You quickly find her location and report it as soon as possible." They just started for a short time, and it seemed as if they could see the next defeat. Agatha's defense was the first obstacle. It can be removed, but it can't be removed so easily. And Agatha was right. With the development of the situation, Bai Chung could only convey the news to the senior executives separately. Almost at the same time when he informed them of the news, he received the communication connection from these people. "Zhong Piling, what do you mean Agatha's defense is useless?" "Jiang Dong, what are you doing?" Zhong Piling and Jiang Dong's voices came out from the connected communication at the same time. The urgency and fear of the two of them were almost concrete. The other party has the ability to offset more. We will try our best to prevent the enemy from invading and ensure the success rate of the defense system upgrade. The function of their upgrade this time is mainly to target the invasion of external abilities and the previously studied invalid ability. The device spread to the periphery of the entire tower. As long as the upgrade is successful, the previous two invasions will no longer happen. "I don't want to try, but must," Jiang Dong said. Compared with Jiang Dong, Zhong Piling was calmer. She asked, "What is their purpose?" "We suspect that her target is the 156 to 166th floor, and the one on the top floor." Bai Chung reported the possibility they analyzed. The Archon tried to kill Fang Zhou again and again. Even the most patient person would not let him go easily. Not to mention, Fang Zhou did not look like someone who was watching his life with a heavy heart. When he mentioned the Archon, Jiang Dong and Zhong Piling fell silent strangely. After receiving the same news, Zheng Zhongshu and the Archon did not give Bai Cheng any instructions. The Zheng family, which was once on par with the Jiang family and the Zhong family, had already become the other party's puppet after showing its edge and wanting to eliminate the Archon. None of them dared to approach that floor. If someone went in and came out again, 90% of them would become the Archon's puppet. After a few seconds, Zhong Piling said, "Don't let her enter the floors with alien creatures." As for the Archon, they wished that Fang Zhou would fight against this arbitrary madman. No matter who died, it would be good, and it would be best if they died together. A suspicious person is detected in the sky. Jacob's prompt was heard by all the personnel, interrupting the communication between the three people and raising the tension of the entire space to the highest level. On the other side, after seeing Agatha's defense field broken, Fang Zhou jumped down from the high building, controlling the wind flow to lift her body. She was like an eagle flying in the sky, sprinting in the direction she wanted to go. The rapid change of the scene around her caused the disguise of the five-colored lizard on her body to fail temporarily. Agatha opened a firewall to the data network, and the eye in the sky escaped from Fang Zhou's control, and her figure finally appeared in the picture. Swoosh! The enemy was scanned, and several lasers and bullets attacked Fang Zhou's direction like a meteor shower. After those bullets touched her body, they were all completely offset by a burst of energy. After releasing that energy, Fang Zhou has been using the equivalent cancellation state, learning from its original owner, wrapping her whole body with energy. And any attack will be cancelled out in the same way, as long as she does not stop using this ability. Nereus can only count it as a reduction in the number of times she uses it. She swallowed something of sufficient value, which can completely guarantee the end of her operation. Jiang Dong's eyes were bloodshot when he saw the picture sent back by the eye in the sky. He shouted to the communication device, "Bai Cheng, you bunch of rubbish. Why don't you stop her quickly?" Bai Cheng also saw these. Can they stop her just by saying so? The ability of equivalent cancellation is invincible before the energy is exhausted, unless they have the means to consume all the energy she has absorbed. Bai Cheng could only mobilize the external firepower to go to Fang Zhou. But these armed machines in the air were crackling and crushed into scrap metal before they could launch the second attack, becoming thin pieces of paper, slowly falling from the sky. Fang Zhou glanced down with understanding. Her eyes passed through the falling pieces of paper and met the pair of dark eyes from afar. "Go, sister." Fang Zhou and Jiang stood where she was just now and mouthed to her. Fang Zhou retracted his sight. Some of the alien creatures she released came out from the dark, and more than a dozen strange monsters left the floor and came to the surroundings of the tower, among which there were more than 10 B-level aliens, which forced the police officers under the tower to start dealing with these emerging alien creatures first. Chaos. Chaos outside. Chaos inside. Fang Zhou could guess the panic of the group of people. After this time, Nereus' abilities would most likely be exposed to the central site. But by that time, she might not need to hide. In a few seconds, she arrived at the 156th floor, and prepared to enter the tower directly through the wall of the hidden worm. Not surprisingly, she came into contact with the defense field that Agatha had reopened on this floor. And the two forces offset each other again, feeling the field dissipate again. Agatha said in fear, "What did she swallow? How much did she swallow?" Fang Zhou had already entered the 156th floor. The endless corridor stretched forward. On the right was a room made of special materials. Countless sounds came into Fang Zhou's ears, all of which were the whispers, pain and help of alien creatures. As the intruder stepped in, a piercing alarm sounded above. "Alert! Alert! A suspicious person has invaded the 156th floor. Repeat, a suspicious person has invaded the 156th floor." The internal anti-intrusion settings were instantly activated, and all the equipment on the ceiling was deployed. Countless gun muzzles were aimed at Fang Zhou, and the bullets fired, and the lasers on the left and right were directed towards her. Fang Zhou did not dodge at all. All these things that fell on her were offset. The smell of gunpowder dissipated, and she walked out of it intact. Some of the members of the elite troops arranged by Agatha to the 156th floor have arrived. The bullets above are constantly replenished and shot. Fang Zhou raised his hand to hang up the wind blade and cut off half of the equipment. Bai Cheng stared at the real-time images transmitted from this floor. The 10 floors starting from this floor were all filled with alien creatures with experimental value captured by the central government over the years. The number was extremely large, with at least hundreds of them on each floor. If Fong Ark wanted to take them out one by one, it would take a long time. Moore's ability was not endless. She would sooner or later run out of energy in the constant obstruction. Moreover, it was impossible for an organization like Yeji to obtain too many equivalent arms. Bai Chung looked at the progress on the screen. As long as it moved forward and covered the upper layer. At this moment, the numbers on it stopped jumping, and the harsh alarm sounded again. Bai Chung was almost numb. Alarm. Alarm. The information layer is being invaded. Chapter 172. Some servers of the central system were built under the underground cell, which was the underground of the track that Fong Ark and his friends had seen before. The entire computer room penetrated 2 floors and occupied the entire space. The huge servers, which looked like a single-story building, were placed in invisible compartments, and the walls were made of explosion-proof materials that could not be penetrated by normal means. When everyone's attention was focused on dealing with Fong Ark, who had entered the tower. Number 1, who was prepared, entered here in advance with Raikiri. The sudden appearance of 2 people attracted the attention of the guards and patrols, and the alarm sounded. It seems that we are not wrong. Reiki raised his mouth, revealing an extremely excited expression. Their purpose was very clear, and the location was confirmed. After entering from underground, Reiki dodged the attacks along the way and led number 1 to teleport to the destination. He raised his hand and touched the solid partition wall, melting it into an entrance in an instant. At the moment when the invasion prompt was sent back from above, Reiki narrowed his eyes, half-crouched, and carried the rocket launcher he brought in and fired several shells at the entrance, melted by number 1. Before the explosion sounded, the 2 of them plopped into the ground pool made by number 1, and the whole process lasted less than a few seconds. Bang! The explosion came from the lower floor, and the patrol personnel in the machine room were knocked out by the violent shock. Jacob's stiff reminder sounded again. Warning. Warning. Some servers are seriously damaged. Stop upgrading immediately. Start the backup server. And start the first level emergency mode. In order to deal with emergencies, Jacob's servers are not all concentrated in the same place. Another part of the central system is responsible for this upgrade task. Rachel and his team destroyed this part. In order to maintain the data operation of the entire park, Jacob must start the backup data. Before Bai Chung came to his senses, a harsh electric current sound came from the communication equipment. Error. Error. The data program is being attacked. Try to clear the invading virus. Zizizi. Lost some management rights. Zizizi. This is a double-sided attack. A perfect coordination. The enemy has made full preparations and knows the layout of the tower very well. Bai Chung can't imagine how many people who originally belonged to the tower have become the opponent's assistants. The successive invasion prompts made Bai Chung feel extremely dazed. The panic reports from the subordinates in the information layer came from the communication equipment, and the images from the information layer were transmitted back. The parts of the main server that was attacked flew around, and the charred pits flashed with electricity. When things get bad to a certain extent, people will reflexively want to choose to give up. Is there any need to save this? Bai Chung couldn't help thinking. Bai Chung. Bai Chung. Zhong Peeling's voice brought him back to reality. What's going on? Bai Chung. What happened? Agatha's question also sounded. Some of Jacob's servers were attacked. The defense system stopped upgrading. Hackers invaded the internal system and lost some management rights. The alien creatures on the 156th floor all came out. Bai Chung closed his eyes. The 156th floor at this time. The explosion-proof steel doors on the right side of the corridor opened one after another, and the cages imprisoned inside were all released under the control of the system. The expressions of the elite troops sent to deal with Fong Zhou changed, and they looked at the monsters that were about to come out with horror, and beads of sweat climbed up their foreheads. What's going on? Colonel Agatha. The alien creatures have been released. What should we do? Some people stopped attacking Fong Zhou and tried to contact their superiors, hoping to get a solution. If these monsters were released, their enemies would not only be the powerful invaders in front of them. Seeing this, Fong Zhou knew that Rachel and his team had succeeded. But she was not the one who invaded the internal system, and she had not had time to try. The specific location of the server was found from the layout drawn by the doctor. The floors where the alien creatures were imprisoned may have changed over the years, but Jacob's server was huge and rooted under the tower, so it was difficult to adjust its position. While they were upgrading, Reiki and his team destroyed some servers, which would inevitably cause a temporary error in the internal system. Fang Zhou originally planned to create such an error before invading the internal system. Her electronic control level was not at the level of arbitrary control, so there was a certain risk, and it might not succeed. Unexpectedly, the hacker took the lead before she started and helped her complete the operation, eliminating the possible risks. Before the operation, Fang Zhou vaguely felt that the hacker would help in this attack. This feeling came inexplicably, as if they had already had this tacit understanding, which made her heart jump. As these doors opened, Fang Zhou reacted quickly and released Tucker in her body. The blue octopus, which did not need to restrain its body size, had a huge body and tentacles. It instantly filled a corridor. The abilities of the transcendents and alien creatures that touched its body disappeared. Some wanted to run, and the alien creatures that came out wanted to escape. Fang Zhou naturally would not allow this to happen. She spread sound waves all over the floor. Some of the fish that slipped through the net were hooked by Tucker's tentacles and pulled back one by one, in order to prevent some alien creatures that Tucker did not touch from escaping. She then started to sit on the ground and imprison them. There were only a few S-level transcendents. Mila, who could fight Fang Zhou back and forth, had no means to fight after she accepted Tucker. In order to prevent her from directly invading the top floor, the transcendents who were guarding the door of the top floor had not arrived yet. It was even more impossible for these transcendents, who were arranged to stop her, to stop Fang Zhou. Tucker used a tentacle to restrain the movements of the transcendents with evil fun, and asked her in a gentle voice, "Do you want to kill them?" "Whatever you want. Don't forget our purpose." Fang Zhou glanced at it, not prepared to stop it nor agree. Fang Zhou began to harvest the alien creatures that came out of the cage one by one, with Tucker restricting the use of their abilities. She harvested them very easily. Instantly, countless prompts flashed before her eyes, some of which were seriously injured by her, and some alien creatures with higher intelligence chose to surrender directly. You seriously injured the alien creature cageworm. You seriously injured the alien creature growth bird. You severely injured the alien creature manticore. You severely injured the alien creature chaos. The alien creature nightmare beast surrenders to you. The alien creature harpy surrenders to you. New illustrations. Number 167. Immobilization, mirror reversal, telekinesis control, dreaming, dimension conversion, electromagnetic control. Countless names and abilities of alien creatures poured in instantly. There were 2 S-level alien creatures on this floor alone. Fang Zhou had no time to sort them out. The alien creatures she had taken in were scrambling to merge into her thin body. The scene in front of her was really horrifying and weird. The guards whose movements were controlled by Tucker widened their eyes in horror, not to mention struggling. Their bodies were stiff, and even their breathing was still. Only Tucker looked at her with gentle and respectful eyes. The number of alien creatures chosen to be accepted in a short period of time was too large. As more and more alien creatures merged into her body, Fang Zhou felt that her head and body exploded. Cold sweat continued to appear behind her, and soon she felt the critical point of being able to accept. "What's wrong with you?" Tucker noticed her abnormality. Fang Zhou immediately realized that there was an upper limit to the short-term containment. She had never tried to merge so many alien creatures at once before, and this was in her blind spot. Her summoner level has not yet been upgraded to the 3rd level. Perhaps breaking through this level will break this limit. In order to avoid any accidents, the plan to take all the 10 floors had to be postponed. She had a more important goal to solve, and the ones she had taken so far were enough for her to come and go freely here in the future. Unfortunately, there was not a single spiritual alien creature on this floor. One of her purposes for coming here was to collect the spiritual abilities of the same kind to upgrade, so that she would be safer when facing S-level spiritual creatures. After taking the last one on this floor into her body, Fang Zhou took a long breath. She looked up at the surveillance camera that she had deliberately not destroyed, and then turned and walked towards the elevator. After completing its mission, the huge blue octopus followed behind her and raised its tentacles to merge into her body. She looked at the camera calmly, but Bai Chung felt the pressure through the screen. He had goosebumps on his back and felt an indescribable chill. After a while, he found his voice. The 156th floor was completely wiped out. I'm not sure if she will continue to the 157th floor. Agatha, can you still deploy a defense field? After a moment of silence, Agatha took a deep breath and yelled at him with full strength. Bai Chung. I'll go to hell. Bai Chung. The original arc was difficult to deal with. They repeatedly hit a wall with her. Now she has subdued the 0626 experimental subject, who escaped from the explosion in the mall. And now she has taken in all the alien creatures on the 156th floor. What will happen next? Will she take away the people from the other floors? How can they stop her? Bai Chung paused for a moment. In the sight of his subordinates, he didn't know how to give the next order. What happened was far beyond his imagination. This was almost a huge army of transcendents. Even if all the transcendents of the elite troops and the direct troops were dispatched, there was no possibility of victory. And the alien creatures they collected were eventually fed to the enemy, strengthening the enemy's strength. There was no sound from the communicator connected to the higher level at the other end. Jiang Dong and Zhong Piling, who also saw these images, all fell into a long silence. The entire control room was so quiet that one could hear the sound of a pin drop. The images on the monitoring wall were still changing. They watched her back. Fang Zhou had already walked to the elevator entrance. The hacker who controlled the internal system at the other end understood and opened the elevator for her. After she entered, it rose steadily upwards. The destination was the top floor of the tower. Chapter 173. The elevator went up silently. Fang Zhou stared at the metal wall of the elevator, on which her shadow was vaguely printed. All the difficulties and obstacles along the way seemed to be for this moment. Now it was time for her to get the answer. Fang Zhou was in a very calm mood at this moment. Soon, the number on the display stopped at 200. The elevator was controlled by hackers. People below could not get up, and people above could not get down. The defense system of the entire floor was also breached. The weapons hidden between the floors stayed quietly in their original positions. Ding. The elevator door opened and Fang Zhou walked out of the elevator. In front of her was a long corridor with red and black carpets. It was so long that the luxurious palace-like doors at the end were insignificant. She walked straight towards the door at the end, and the sound of shoes rubbing against the carpet was heard. Mi Le, wearing a military uniform, stood guard at the gate. Her eyes were fixed on Fang Zhou, who came out of the elevator. Her muscles were tense, ready to fight at any time, no matter what happened. Mi Le was the most loyal supporter of the Archon. Those people she was familiar with left the tower one by one, and now only the Archon was left. As Fang Zhou approached, Mi Le bent down, her feet against the floor, and made a sprinting posture, and then rushed towards Fang Zhou like a cannonball and approached her. Before she got close, a force spread from Fang Zhou. Mi Le stopped moving when she came into contact with this force. Her face was stiff. Her whole body was imprisoned, and she couldn't move at all. This is the immobilization ability of the A-level alien creature cage worm that Fang Zhou just got from the 156th floor. However, this kind of instant immobilization cannot trap Mi Le. Her hands can tear apart all energy, and this kind of confinement is only 1 second. But 1 second is enough. Mi Le didn't have time to break free from the control. The blue tentacles followed and wrapped her hands. After touching Tucker's body, all of Mi Le's abilities stopped working, and she could no longer use her abilities to break free from control. The inability to operate her abilities means that her regeneration power is also invalidated. In this case, if she is fatally injured, she will definitely die. As early as when Fang Zhou obtained Tucker, the battle with Mi Le was no longer suspenseful. Her slightly immature face was cold, and even though her movements were restricted, she had no intention of giving up, and was extremely stubborn. Fang Zhou moved to her side, and she approached Mi Le and said in a light tone, "Levi asked me to take care of you. Number 1 is very curious about you, and Feixing doesn't want me to kill you." Hearing her mention Li Wei and Feixing, Mi Le's expression finally changed. She was slightly stunned, and it seemed that she had never thought that Li Wei and Feixing would plead for her, and she didn't expect Number 1 to be curious about her. But soon, Mi Le's face flushed suddenly, and she realized that her playing house like thoughts were seen through by the person in front of her. The secret thoughts were unfolded in the sunlight, and she felt ashamed. She stared at Fang Zhou fiercely. "Why are you saying this to me? Do you want to let me go? Do you want me to submit to you?" Fang Zhou smiled. She looked back at her and said word by word, "I didn't say that." The line python gathered on Fang Zhou's fingers. becoming a sharp dagger. She stretched forward and pierced Mi Li's heart. After pulling it out, she raised her hand and cut her carotid artery. Blood splattered, falling on Fang Zhou's body and Tucker's tentacles, and finally disappeared into the red and black carpet. I don't like blood, Tucker said. Without the recovery of regeneration ability, Mi Li could feel every moment of blood spurting out, every moment of life lost, and she made a ho-ho sound, as heavy breathing. She hadn't felt this way for a long time, as if waiting for her death. Fang Zhou did not remove the immobilization ability and tentacles that imprisoned her movements, but just stood in front of her and looked at her indifferently. Was she laughing at her? Laughing at her naive ideas? Facing Fang Zhou's eyes, Mi Li felt unspeakable grievance. She envied Fang Zhou, and even more envied Fei Xing, who had the courage to run towards freedom, while she had nothing. As time passed, Mi Li's consciousness gradually blurred. She looked up at the closed door and couldn't help feeling a little confused. Is she going to die? At the moment when Mi Li's vital signs were about to disappear, Fang Zhou retracted Tucker's tentacles. Bang! Mi Li's body fell heavily to the ground. She was on the verge of death. Half of her consciousness had dissipated. Her abilities were invalidated, and she was in her current state. Even if she regained all her abilities in an instant, she couldn't start to work quickly. Fang Zhou walked towards the door behind her. After a few steps, she could hear the sound of flesh and blood tissues struggling to produce granulations and begin to repair. She didn't turn back to give her the last blow, and walked through the heavy door without looking away. The only room on the top floor was spacious and dimly lit. On the other side was an extremely huge floor-to-ceiling window, which was above the height of the entire paradise and took in the scenery of the world. A man in a black and gold military uniform sat on the sofa in the middle. The golden mask he wore covered most of his face, revealing only one black eye. The moment Fang Zhou passed through the door, Tucker broke away from her body, and its body almost occupied the entire space, pressing the man under heavy tentacles to prevent him from using his abilities. His eyes were calm, without any emotion, as if he had been waiting for her here for a long time, without any signs of running away. Even though Tucker had controlled him, Fang Zhou still felt alert in her heart. She moved to his front, pulled out the gun from the holster on her waist, stepped on Tucker's tentacles and squatted down, pressing against his head. We finally meet. The Archon looked up at Fang Zhou. At this time, he was not afraid of death. He said slowly, "You have grown too fast. It is really difficult to eradicate you. How did you get out of control? Because of you, the world has become a mess." "Who are you?" Fang Zhou tilted his head in confusion. She raised her other hand to tear off the mask on his face. When her fingertips touched his cheek, Fang Zhou paused for a second. "No, that's not right. How can a human body be so stiff and cold? It seems to be just a mechanical shell made." Bang! After realizing this, Fang Zhou shot at him without hesitation, controlling Tucker to twist his body. At the moment of the gunshot, severe pain suddenly hit, and powerful mental abilities invaded Fang Zhou's brain. Fang Zhou's vision flashed white light, and his mind went blank. In this intense pain, her mind began to play all her memories like a revolving lantern, and quickly rewinded from today. She planned to move the headquarters, go undercover in the Joint Defense Bureau, join the night to recruit troops, enter the paradise, escape from the White Whale Zone, and leave the 001 shelter. In 1 second, she recalled all the memories, and finally stopped at the scene before she came to this world, when she was on the operating table. Until here, it was like a videotape that failed to rewind, and she could not continue. What happened next? What happened next? Fang Zhou suddenly became alert. She couldn't even remember what happened next. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. The Archon's head was shot through by a bullet. No blood flowed out of the burnt hole. His body was distorted by Tucker's attack, but he could still speak normally, because of Fang Zhou's confusion. Even Tucker followed her into the same mental confusion. The Archon's lifeless dark eyes revealed from the golden mask looked at her. His slow tone was slightly raised, and there was a sudden realization of seeing the truth. "You forgot who you are, Fang Zhou. You actually deliberately forgot yourself." "Shut up." Fang Zhou gritted his teeth. Tucker's tentacles clearly wrapped around his body. So why would the neutralization be useless? Unless it was not his body that was in contact. The intense pain and invasion made her unable to think, and she couldn't see the scene in front of her clearly. The Archon picked up the gun she dropped on the ground and fired several shots at her in succession. Unfortunately, even though he was in mental confusion, the more power running on Fang Zhou's body was still not removed, and all the bullets he fired were offset. Realizing that ordinary means could not kill her, the Archon stopped. Then, more violent mental power poured into her head, like a blade cutting her flesh and blood territory in her mind. He wanted to control Fang Zhou to remove the power running on her body and let her end her life by herself, in front of her sharp will. Even the S-level mental power could not break through successfully. In this pain that ordinary people could not bear, Fang Zhou felt her eyes burning, and the ignited anger gathered into magma in her heart. Unprecedented emotions swept over her, like a building tilting, a mountain collapsing, and the ground cracking. Countless pictures followed, gathering into clues in Fang Zhou's mind. The broken wound led her to death. The bullet penetrated her head. The monster pierced her chest. The amputated limbs. Suffocation. Decay. Death. Pain. Death. Pain. Death. A life that was framed and repeated. Those were the memories of Ark. Memories of countless times the world line was restarted. The sudden influx of huge memories made Fang Zhou stop thinking at this moment. Familiar voices rang in Fang Zhou's mind, and she saw countless pictures flashing at the same time. Sister. Sister, don't leave me. Sister. Don't leave me here alone. Sister. I only have you. Sister. Don't leave me. The only crying sound stopped abruptly, as if someone pressed the pause button, as if the bug in the program was cleared and it was running again, and the sadness and despair on the young man's face disappeared. The scene jumped again. Fang Zhou remembered the scene when she was on the verge of death in Dangang, and standing in front of her was Lu Filan, and her voice came again. Do you think this world is real? You seem to have doubts. Lu Filan, have you ever thought about how you came here? Are you too bored to stay here every day? Always thinking about these messed up things. You believed it last time. Do you think this world is real? Maybe not. Lu Filan, do you want to leave with me? What a pity. I was discovered. See you next time. Next time. Invite me directly. Will you agree? No matter how many times I do it again, my choice will be the same. Even if I die. Will it be the same? The same. That is the result of my choice. Fang Zhou's memory continued to move forward. The white corridor was so dazzling that it hurt her eyes. And another voice sounded again. Will we meet again? They all call me 0626. Yes. Run away. Run away from here quickly. Go find your companions and become my strength. A shrill alarm sounded suddenly, accompanied by the researcher's panicked footsteps. A white figure brushed Fang Zhou's shoulder and hurriedly passed by, and a hand grabbed her shoulder. Miss Old Human, you've gone to the wrong floor. Sorry. Your elevator system suddenly broke down and sent me to this floor. Don't run around next time. Why are you all so panicked? Did something happen? An experimental subject escaped. It's not a big deal. Really? Then we have to catch him quickly. The memory stopped at the last scene, and the text kept appearing on the communicator. Are you sure you want to do this? There are too many uncertainties. How do you know everything will develop as you imagined? This is the only possibility. Will you help me? Hacker? Of course I will help you. I want to return to my world, in order not to be discovered. I will help you when everything is settled. Goodbye. Ark. Ark suddenly opened his eyes. The mental power that invaded her had been completely expelled. She had never been so clear-headed before. The unclear picture finally entered her sight. You? The Archon took a step back suddenly. The mental backlash made him unable to move. The hole in his head that she shot was full of mechanical parts and tissues. He had no human body at all. Ark looked sharply at the spherical system control on the ceiling that connected the entire room. She stepped on Tucker's body, and the electric current power obtained from Wei Siyuan filled the entire room. All the machines hidden in this space were destroyed instantly, making a crackling sound of electricity, including the spherical optical computer above. The current shot up a blue light on it, and the Archon's body suddenly fell down. Fang Zhou's eyes were deep, and the feeling of suffocation faded. She fell on Tucker's tentacles. Her chest rose and fell, and she began to breathe heavily. The majestic anger still burned her heart. Her whole body was hot, and the murderous intent that had nowhere to vent was imprisoned in her chest. She knew that her enemy had not really fallen. She would kill him, no matter where he was. She would kill him. After a while, her emotions gradually calmed down, and a line of words was projected from her undamaged communication device into the air. Fong Zhou looked over and saw that it said, "Welcome back, my friend." At the same time, in the outside world, after receiving the interruption of the mental information, the door of the game cabin opened, and after a while, a pale hand stretched out from the cabin. Administrator 001 logs out of the game Old Wasteland. Chapter 174. Continuous logout prompt sounded in a separate space. The whole room was simple and empty. The most eye-catching thing was the slightly lower control panel in the middle. There were several large instruments next to the game cabin, which were used for unknown purposes and connected to the people in the cabin. The people in the game cabin took a long time to slowly struggle out of it. He trembled with his hands and pulled off the wires connected to his body. He fell to the ground exaggeratedly just after half of his body came out, and he couldn't get up no matter what. The hurried footsteps were getting closer and closer. When they reached the door, they had become the sound of running. The door suddenly opened, and an older woman wearing silver-rimmed glasses and a gray casual suit hurried into the room. Seeing that the person in the cabin wanted to get out, she hurriedly pushed the wheelchair on one side forward, went over to support the man, asked him to hold her arm to lend him strength, moved him to the wheelchair, and raised her hand to feed him the medicine she brought. The man swallowed the medicine and began to breathe heavily. His face was painful, and the spiritual backlash from the connection to another world came to the outside world. Tinnitus and shortness of breath. The double pain of body and mind made him unable to speak for a while. The woman gave him a buffer time, and when she saw that he was in a better state, she asked, "Chutu, I know you failed. What are you going to do now?" If Fong Zhou was there, he would find that the man's name was the name of the game company. Jiang Chutu spoke in a hoarse and difficult voice, as if he was dying. "Shihan, you should have put the players into the world earlier to remind me." Shihan showed an unhappy expression. "You know there is a huge time difference between the inner world and the outer world. Since the virus appeared, the program calculation has completely failed, and it is even more impossible to interfere with the inner world. When I found out, things had already reached this point. I had already put the players into the game at the fastest speed." Being questioned seemed to annoy her, and she continued, "You are the one who has no time, and you are also the one who should be anxious. You don't need to question me. It's better to say that you have so much power in that world. Why can't you even kill a program bug? If you hadn't done anything, would things have reached such a critical point?" Jiang Chutu. He pursed his lips and remained silent for a while. Without any explanation, he put his hand down from Shihan's arm, controlled the wheelchair to move to the middle console, and began to operate. "What do you want to do? Do you have a solution?" Shihan said. And when she walked to Jiang Chutu and saw the code he entered, she immediately realized his purpose. She hurried to stop him before he pressed the confirmation button. "Are you crazy? Are you going to do this now?" Shihan yelled at him. "Do you know how many people went in this time?" Ahem. Jiang Chutu coughed twice. His eyes were cold, and he explained, "Now the only way to restart is to accelerate the destruction of this world. Strengthening the connection between the two worlds can achieve this effect." "Then you can't do it so early," Jiang Chutu said to himself. "You can distribute some more game cabins. Anyway, the time difference between the inner world and the outer world is large enough. By then, this world will have been destroyed, and it can be reopened. You have always wanted to see the results of the research. Now is the time. Otherwise," after hearing what he said, Shihan did not speak again. She let go of him and walked around a few times in the same place uneasily, thinking about the consequences of this matter. After several struggles, her eyes became more determined and fanatical, and she soon accepted the result and moved on to another topic. "Have you figured out why the Ark became a bug?" She deliberately forgot herself and tampered with her memory to disguise herself as someone from the outside world. Breaking away from program control, she showed signs of breaking free from her original personality. This was also the reason why we failed to kill her in Dangang. Jiang Chutu was a little confused. Who gave her this inspiration? Shihan showed a surprised expression when he heard the reason and began to digest the news. Jiang Chutu began to review the reasons for his failure in his mind. He opened his eyes slightly and finally grasped the key person this time. The hacker in the fourth dimension is likely to be the first wave of testers trapped in the inner world. Go and investigate the follow-up of the previous incident. Okay. I got it. After getting a positive answer, Jiang Chu pressed the confirmation button. After reading, a line of words appeared on it. Program execution successful. Instructions have been sent to all game cabins. Inner world. The line of words projected by the communicator slowly disappeared. Fang Zhou closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm back. Thank you." A few seconds later, Fang Zhou got up from Tucker. In a very short time, Fang Zhou received a lot of memories. She was not confused at all. And she quickly corrected her identity. She is Fang Zhou, an NPC trapped in a predetermined fate. And she will only die forever. The so-called crossing is just a means for her to fight against unknown forces. This was not the first time she discovered the truth of the world. In the previous program restarts, she had many different lifespans and deaths. No matter how she struggled, she could not change her destiny. At first, she had no memory before the restart, and she struggled with instinct, discovering her imprisoned fate again and again, until the connection between the two worlds became stronger, and someone was thrown into the inner world to replace the original residents. She began to have the memory of each restart, and because of the enhanced connection between the two worlds, she was able to access the game forum through data exchange to touch the information of the outside world, and know a lot about the plot. It was also this point that attracted hackers who could wander between the boundaries of the two worlds through data, and became her first companion. Soon, the first group of people who were put into the game were completely trapped in the game, lost their original memories, and completely became the people they replaced. The hacker later told her that these people were the original testers of the game cabin. They are dead. But I still remember these. I am not controlled because I have not completely become a person in this world. My body in another world has not died yet, and someone is waiting for me to return. If the hacker did not appear, Fang Ark could only convince herself that this was just a controlled game world. But the hacker appeared, and she realized that it was not as simple as she thought. She could not see through their purpose of sending people from the outside world into the inner world to replace the natives. But she knew she couldn't let them go on like this. She didn't want to experience death again. She didn't want to disappear completely one day. Her anger accumulated over and over again, becoming her weapon and courage to forget herself. Fortunately, she made the right bet. This was the closest time for the Ark to life, and it was also the time she completely got rid of control. Her sight stopped at the body of the Archon. She knew that the person who controlled this body had returned to his world, and she didn't really kill her enemy. Tucker, who had experienced the mental invasion with her, raised a tentacle to her, and its tone was very pleasant. "Do you remember me and Wan Chao? Long time no see." 0626. Tucker. Its huge tentacles trembled with excitement, and it said, "I am so happy that I have goosebumps." Fang Zhou looked subtle. "You still have this thing?" Tucker. "It's just a description. Don't think too much about it. It's a pity that Wan Chao is gone. Otherwise he would be very happy." Fang Zhou did not answer. The person who really helped it, and Wan Chao out was Fang Zhou. She knew that they would escape from the tower, and establish a small force later. She wanted them to be her helpers in the future. So she designed to help them escape from the tower in advance. Whether it was Lu Filan, Wan Chao, or the hacker, they were all indispensable members of her to get to where she is now. Zizizi. The communication device was hacked, and the hacker's brisk voice came from it, and one could hear her cheerful mood. "What do you want to do next?" He will definitely respond after returning to the outside world. Fang Zhou finally got here. This was the moment when she was closest to success. She must not let them destroy everything she had done. Fang Zhou, release some of the alien creatures on the 157th floor. The hacker asked in confusion. "You can. But what are you going to do? Are you going to contain them all?" "Ark, pave the way for one person. The world must continue to operate. We can't let it rot like this. I promise. This will be the last cycle." "Hacker, you've made my blood boil. Let's meet after this is over." "My friend." Fang Zhou, of course. As soon as Fang Zhou finished speaking, the hacker released half of the alien creatures on the 157th floor. These creatures could not go down, so they broke the glass on the top floor and fell down one by one from this floor like dumplings. Things had completely exceeded Zhong Peeling and Jiang Dong's expectations. Bai Cheng looked at the alien creatures falling from the floors and almost lost his words. "It's over." Jiang Dong fell on the chair, and Zhong Peeling closed his eyes. The Archon was dead. This was the first time they hoped that the Archon would win. Fang Zhou jumped out of the window and landed on the ground with these alien creatures. Then she released some of the alien creatures that she had just contained, and mixed them with the alien creatures that she had not contained, acting as the commander of the chaos. In a short period of time, Fang Zhou received a lot of containment information, and she did not contain all these things at once for the time being. The guards who were originally used to deal with Fang Zhou now have more important things to do. Now they come to deal with a large number of alien creatures. Even if someone sees Fang Zhou, no one dares to approach her. And Fang Zhou found her target this time. Wu Yuanbo. Among this group of people, across the distant crowd, Wu Yuanbo looked at her as if he had noticed something. Fang Zhou blinked at her, made a mouth shape to her, and pointed to the sky. What she said was, "Seize the opportunity." Director Wu. Wu Yuanbo looked in the direction that Fang Zhou pointed to, and saw some drones that had sneaked into the central eye. The tower caused such a big commotion that it naturally attracted the attention of the public. People could see what was happening here from a distance. There was an uproar on the internet, and someone used a drone to broadcast live at this area. Hackers intervened, and the central government could no longer control public opinion. The sky was full of headlines about the central government's disqualification and pictures of a large number of alien creatures escaping. Wu Yuanbo immediately received Fang Zhou's meaning. She smiled in the direction of Fang Zhou, and her light brown eyes showed a sense of determination to win, commanding her subordinates to become the biggest beneficiaries of this chaos. A new revolution is about to begin. Chapter 175. Shocked. Alien creatures are moving in droves. Is this an official conspiracy? The manager is completely unqualified. Who will save the people in danger? The corrupt consortium leaders need new power. The leaders are crazy? The paradise will be destroyed by these people sooner or later. She is the only one who heard the cry of the child. The hero rushed out of the monsters. Has anyone not seen this video? The goddess of dawn fighting on the front line. We need a leader who is not afraid of hardships to protect the people. Director of the Main Gang City Joint Defense Bureau. Wu Yuanbai. She will be our dawn light. Fang Zhou read out the exaggerated headlines of the media in a rhythmic manner. Wu Yuanbo leaned on the bed in the medical room. She was injured in the battle against the alien creature an hour ago. She looked miserable, and had a sense of deliberateness. She had just finished using the recovery agent, and looked up to listen to Fang Zhou reading the headlines of the media. She was very receptive to this kind of title, with a strong sense of middle school. Fang Zhou originally read these headlines in a teasing mood, looking at Wu Yuanbo's appearance. You can tell that she enjoyed it. Her original goal was to reach the top of power, and these public opinions would be an important means for her to achieve this step. Fang Zhou. Fang Zhou stopped reading, and Wu Yuanbo gave her a "Why don't you continue?" eyes. Fang Zhou, do you like this gift I gave you? Wu Yuanbo smiled and said, Need I say that? The matter had just ended, and it was out of the arbitrary control of the Central Data Network. Without official restrictions, the discussion on the Paradise website was overwhelming. The pictures taken by the drone were extremely thrilling. Dozens of alien creatures escaped from the tower. The entire battle range almost extended from the empty area of the tower to the citizen area, causing great commotion. Fang Zhou tried his best to control her aliens from hurting pedestrians, but in order to achieve the goal, it was impossible to have no damage at all. These needed to be stopped by Wu Yuanbo. The fall of the day has been coming for more than 20 years. Paradise is an independent land arc. The people living in the first area can be said to be living in the Garden of Eden. There is a very small probability of being exposed to the real cruelty of this world. It's not that there are no alien creatures in the park, and everyone has enough resources, but under the complete control of the central government for so many years. Those cases, and people who died accidentally at the hands of alien creatures have long been covered up. Before the Dangang incident, the environment in District 2 was worse than outside the park, and the people there accounted for half of the entire park. Now the successive official failures have caused several major consequences that have put everyone in a possible crisis. In the morning, it was revealed that the Dangang explosion carried radiation, and in the evening, the alien creatures imprisoned in the tower escaped in large numbers. The prestige of those in power in the tower has almost fallen to the bottom, and they are in urgent need of a new spiritual leader. In this situation, the alien creatures controlled by the Ark and Wu Yuanbo cooperated well. Wu Yuanbo's ability determined that she knew what to do in this battle that paved the way for her. She naturally became the most eye-catching character in this alien riot. She calmly and decisively led her men to suppress several monsters that were about to flee to the city center. What's worse is that one of her heroic scenes in which she was injured while trying to save a child who strayed into the city was perfectly captured by the drones that strayed into the city. It can be said that within less than half an hour after these captured images were spread on the internet, Wu Yuanbo became the center of discussion. As a person with certain power who can reach the position of director of the Joint Defense Bureau, he has a sense of distance from the people. They are often proof that the consortium family has a one-handed cover. In this world where the power holders must be indifferent, Wu Yuanbo's actions undoubtedly broke this cognition. She appeared at the right time, and she was the spiritual leader that the people needed most. What Fang Zhou needed was material. Material that could accumulate public opinion for Wu Yuanbo. So when things were almost going well, she recovered some of the alien creatures. But of course the scenes where she appeared would be cut off by hackers. After all the night personnel of this operation were transferred back, Fang Zhou observed the situation on the scene and the public opinion on the internet, and first came to the Joint Defense Bureau to see Wu Yuanbo. Now that the Archon is dead, because of Fang Zhou's disruption, the tower is in chaos, and the entire paradise has become disorderly. Without this absolute ruler at the top, power is dispersed downwards, and the consortium families holding the top power will definitely attack each other. The power of these consortiums is complicated, and many shelters outside the paradise will have their forces inserted. It does not mean that Fang Zhou can solve the current situation in this world by killing their leaders. The players are still in this world, and the connection between the inner world and the outer world has not been cut off. Fang Zhou does not have time to deal with such things. Professional things should be done by professionals. You have privately surrendered to the Zhong family. Soon, the discussion on the internet will intensify. The other party will most likely use the prestige I have created for you to control you and want you to become a puppet in their hands. Fang Zhou said, as long as the people who can sit in that position have real power in their hands, they will not care about their reputation among the people. She could probably think of those people's methods and said it appropriately to Wu Yuanbo. Wu Yuanbo also understood this truth, and she said firmly, there is nothing wrong with this. I will make good use of this. Thank you this time. Fang Zhou smiled at her. Let's have a pleasant cooperation next time. Dong dong. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Director Wu. Is it convenient for me to come in? Please come in. The medical staff pushed the door in, and the shadows swayed. There was only Wu Yuanbo in the whole room, and the other person, who was originally in the room, left quietly. After coming out of the Joint Defense Bureau, Fang Zhou recontacted the hacker. She has taken in a lot of new alien creatures this time. Those alien creatures that are qualified to stay in the center are not useless, and have all kinds of abilities. With these powers, she can come and go freely almost anywhere without being discovered. Where are you? Let's meet, Fang Zhou said. I'm in Minggang City. The hacker waited for her for a long time. Her tone slightly raised, and she reported a string of addresses. She was currently very close to the tower and the Joint Defense Bureau, in a community between the two, with a high level of security. I'm afraid the central staff didn't expect her to be so close to them. Fang Zhou responded and quickly moved to the door of the hacker's residence. I'm here. Fang Zhou said to the communication device that she could go in directly, but she didn't do so. In many previous restarts, the connection between her and the hacker was based on the data network, in order not to attract the attention of the outside world. In Fang Zhou's memory, they had never met in the true sense. After a while, the lock on the door was unlocked, and a gap opened in the doorway, and Fang Zhou entered through it. Once inside, the living room with the largest space was transformed into a machine room. The entire space was filled with data display screens and electronic control consoles. The light was dim, and only the blue light of the screen illuminated the environment. Fang Zhou's sight stopped at the woman in casual clothes sitting on the chair in front. Realizing that Fang Zhou had come in, she quickly turned the chair around, and it was the woman in the hoodie that Fang Zhou had seen before when he was sheltering the wall rat. Fang Zhou noticed something, and was not surprised to see her. She smiled. First meeting? Well, it shouldn't count. As a tester of the outside world, the hacker will not enter the control of the program, no matter how many times the world is restarted. Just as the Archon thought, the hacker is indeed the inspiration of Ark's disguise. The hacker is still the same as the last time Ark saw her. She has dark circles under her eyes and looks listless. But after seeing Ark, her eyes brightened up, as if they were lit up with color. She said, "This is still our first meeting. Last time you didn't remember me, And I didn't have a chance to introduce myself. I think we can skip this step, Fang Zhou said. She naturally sat down on another chair next to the hacker. Turned to her. Her eyes soft. We are already very familiar with each other. Seeing this, the hacker pouted. I want to reminisce with you first. If we want to reminisce, it won't be a good memory. Fang Zhou looked at her with a smile. Okay, the hacker said helplessly. That's true. For Fang Zhou, those were all failed attempts to break free. Hacker, then tell me about your progress. About the players. Although the hacker can surf the data network, she doesn't know all the information. If she receives all the data information, her head would have exploded long ago. She pays the most attention to the news from the central government. On the one hand, she infers the current progress of Fang Zhou based on the official actions. And on the other hand, she helps her at the critical moment. The hacker didn't think Ark could go this far at first. Before Ark forgot about himself, he had already laid out the plan and predicted all the next actions with the hacker. These were the bloody roads paved by the information she received during those failures. No matter what happened along the way, the final direction was almost the same as she had calculated at the beginning, which made the hacker deeply aware of how correct her choice was when she contacted Ark. The hacker was trapped in this world for too long. She could only detect the movement of time in the outside world through the game forum. She prayed countless times in her heart that she had not been abandoned. She didn't want to become the same existence as those companions who were completely integrated into this world. I have accepted some players into Night Sovereign to observe their actions. So far, they have not shown any abnormalities. Fang Zhou roughly told her about what she had done recently. This matter was the discussion point of the third section recently, and the hacker actually knew about it. I have successfully established the third section. After listening, the hacker stated without thinking. She was a tester of the first wave of game cabins, and knew that it was only a matter of time before they released the game cabins. After the test was over and the game was released, more people from the outside world would enter it. In the previous restart, the concept of the third section was proposed to her by Fang Zhou. At that time, Fang Zhou said, "You are the king of the data world, and no one else can do it except you." The hacker was a little discouraged at first because the difficulty coefficient was too high, but the desire to go home overcame everything. She tested the third section many times. At first, she classified the people entering the park into a range, so as to control a specific group of people, so that she could accurately connect the data link of the range of people after the players invested. In order to do this, she spent many years. I know. Fang Zhou said, "Of course I know. Thank you for your hard work." Hearing her say this, the hacker felt a little hot in her eyes for some reason, and she lowered her head and sniffed. Fang Zhou waited for a while, and continued after she adjusted her mood. "Do you know who the Archon is?" The hacker thought for a while. "I suspect it was the creator, or the person who got the source code of this world. So far, I still don't understand why they put people from the outside world in to replace the natives. There will be answers to these." Fang Zhou narrowed her eyes. She would get these answers sooner or later. Now that the Archon has left the game, there will soon be countermeasures from the outside world. Hearing her mention this, the hacker suddenly realized what she wanted to say, and she said, "They have already started. Players can no longer quit." Chapter 176. Hearing this result, Fang Zhou couldn't help but think of a sentence. It finally started. She was mentally prepared for this answer. There were more than 10 testers in the hacker's group. Once they entered the game, their connection with the outside world would be completely cut off. Just like the players. Unlike the players, they can communicate directly with each other, and there is no exit command. They thought that the game cabin technology might not be in place, and needed to wait for the outside world to repair it. In addition, the identity of the holographic cabin tester was inherently dangerous, so they kept waiting for rescue from the outside world. It was not until time passed slowly, and some of their companions forgot themselves, and completely integrated into this world, becoming the natives of this world, that they discovered the abnormality. But it was too late. They, the testers, became the first victims of the test experiment. Now there are no technical problems, and some players have safely exited the game. The Archon wants to use the same method to keep the player's spirit in this world at this critical moment. There must be a reason, and the purpose they are pointing to is just like the Archon's persistent desire to kill the Ark, which is purely guessable. They want to destroy this world and regain control of this world. Feng Zhou concluded that the connection between the two worlds may be destroyed if it is strengthened in a short period of time. I think so too. But I don't understand how this will accelerate the collapse of this world. The hacker frowned. They must not let this happen. The restart of the world means that all the actions of Feng Zhou this time will be cleared. Feng Zhou's trump cards have been revealed in this restart. At the beginning, she knew that this was a road that would never allow failure. Feng Zhou quickly went through the recent changes in the internal world in his mind, looking for clues. Since I left the 001 shelter and the Archon came, the scope of the safe zone has been shrinking. Feng Zhou narrowed his eyes slightly. If this is the method, the world has not been able to be rebuilt for a long time. Maybe it has something to do with this. The hacker said, if this is true, we will know the answer soon. At the original shrinking speed, it will take many years for the safe zone to be compressed into paradise. To destroy the world in this way, the speed will inevitably increase to an incredible level. If this is true, it means that we don't have much time. Feng Zhou's heart sank. She thought about it, took out the communicator to confirm the situation of the third plate. The hacker saw her thoughts and controlled the ability to call out the third plate and projected it in the air through the projection device on the side. It's easier to see this way. The blue screen showed all the topics posted by players in the third section. The incident happened suddenly, and many players had not noticed it yet. There were only a few topics posted in the third section, but the number of replies increased rapidly. In just a short time, there were 20 to 30 replies. Subject: is there a bug in the system? Why can't I find the exit command? At Administrator: as the title says, what's going on? Am I the only one like this? I'm so panicked now. I checked the interface several times, but I couldn't find the exit command. I was sweating. I checked this thread right away, and my exit command disappeared too. Wait, mine is gone too. Did everyone's disappear? Is there anyone with the exit command? Is the game pod broken? I'm a little scared. Friends, it's been over 10 minutes, and none of them are working properly. I'm going crazy. Are we trapped here? At Admin: now think about it. How did a little-known company come up with this upgraded version of the game pod that's superior to all the other pods on the market? Did it really pass the official safety test? Don't scare me. Why is there no action from the administrator? Isn't this section officially managed? No online customer service? I thought about the above problem before I came here. I searched their device security code on the official website. Although it's a little new, there is no problem with it. It has passed the official test standard. So it's probably just a temporary draw? Everyone calm down and wait and see. It may be just like the game server draw. It may come back soon. This topic post fermented for a while, like a stone thrown into a calm lake. New topics began to emerge crazily in these posts one after another. In just a short while, the third section was already dominated by the same topic. New topic tags with the word new keep popping up. Topic: the exit command really disappeared. The next is a new angle. Topic: it's not just the exit that disappeared, but all the game settings. The pain setting is also invalid. I was unlucky these 2 days and got injured. I set it to 0 pain, so I didn't feel anything. Just now, all the pain came back. I treated the wound, and then I had the energy to post. I pinched myself hard. What the thread starter said is true. It's just that the exit command is faulty. Maybe it will be fixed soon. But the pain shielding is also invalid? I'm going crazy. I really want to die if I can't block the pain. What happened outside? I will sue them when I get out. How dare they distribute such defective products? Too dangerous. I will definitely sue them. I'll wait for the game company to pay. I don't think it's that simple. Is this really just a malfunction of the game cabin? It's not a conspiracy. Are we guinea pigs? Can you please stop making such terrible guesses? I'm sweating in broad daylight. What if this malfunction can't be repaired? Holographic games achieve this effect by connecting our brain nerves. It's no exaggeration to say that it's the most vulnerable part of our body. I dare not imagine the consequences of mistakes. Yeah. Will the equipment error really not affect us? As time goes by, the topic becomes more and more extreme. I have a guess. If we are really trapped in this, will suicide be effective? After all, isn't exiting the game the death of the body? Theoretically, it should be possible. But who dares to do it? What if you really die after committing suicide? Brain death is real death. And there is no case of brain death being revived by current medical methods. Don't give such extreme advice. What if someone really tries it? Don't go crazy. Commit suicide? It's better to consider how to survive in this environment. Surviving here is much more difficult than committing suicide. That's true. Looking at some people's comments before, it seems that many people landed in a bad environment. I don't care. If I am trapped here, I will definitely take extreme measures to try to get back. The exit command disappears. Before things turn around, you may really die here. Please protect yourself. No one wants to stay in this world. There are dangers everywhere and no dawn. Unless you are lucky enough to land in a good identity, it is extremely difficult to survive. You don't know when death will occur. Not to mention that their relatives, friends, and lovers are in another world. So what should we do now? There is no other way. We can only wait. There are nearly 1,000 of us. If the authorities find out something is wrong, they will definitely intervene. Don't worry. But time in the game is not connected to the outside world. How long will it take to be discovered? If there is a problem with the game company's equipment, we will probably know it at the first time. Don't scare yourself. Sorry. I only care about the fact that you will get a holographic cabin when you advance to the top 50 in the plot. If they have such a safety hazard, what's the point of getting this holographic cabin? +1 above. The safety hazard of this equipment is a big problem. There was an example of brain damage caused by problems with holographic equipment earlier. What's going on? All the efforts during this period are in vain? Are you still thinking about these things now? Are you obsessed with money? It took less than half an hour to find that the command disappeared. Although it has caused panic among many players, there are still many people who regard it as an official equipment failure of the game. They are still in a relatively relaxed state of mind. The topic is still increasing. Fong Zhou and the hacker did not read it anymore. The direction of the next topic can be guessed. The current number of online people in the third section is 897. There is not much change from the last time. Do you need to give these players some tips? The hacker asked. These people came from the same world as her, so her heart would naturally lean more towards her kind. And these players assumed that the third section of the fourth dimension was operated by the official. And many people kept tagging the administrator. This time they implicated quite a few players. Fong Zhou looked at these posts and spoke, grasped the key points, and thought of the places she had not paid attention to just now. This time, the Archon did not leave a way out for himself. Why did the unit that Fong Zhou referred to be the Archon? Not the game company. Because she had felt the strongest malice from the outside world. The murderous intent that would not give up was exactly the same as what the Archon brought to her. And she was more inclined to believe that a few lunatics planned all this. Similarly, if their purpose is just to destroy this world and restart it, even if the external game is not ready to operate properly, it is impossible to pull so many people into the game. Fong Zhou knows that their world is different from here, with a complete legal system, just like the old world. He did this, which means that he doesn't care about the consequences. Fong Zhou immediately figured it out. Putting these players into this world is also one of their original purposes. But the abnormal situation we brought made them act in advance. Fong Zhou's breathing became heavier, and his heart was cold. What experiment are they doing? I guess they might put some more players in. I'll check the progress of the game forum in the outer world in a few hours, Fong Zhou said. I'll decide then. There are a lot of players, and it's easy to make more mistakes. If her guess is true, there will probably be a larger number of people entering the inner world next. The hacker's expression also became solemn. The replacement of a few hundred people may not cause large-scale riots in this world. But what if it's tens of thousands? I know. The hacker turned off the projection of the third plate and looked up at Fong Zhou. There was some confusion in her eyes. What's next? What should we do next? Fong Zhou got rid of the program control, and she became the key to restarting this world. But what's next? The outside world has new means of response. If their guesses are verified one by one, and the safe zone continues to shrink and covers the entire world, how should they deal with the attack from another world? How should she return to her original world, compared with the enemies in the outside world? Fong Zhou's situation is still much more passive. She is unstoppable in this world. But how to deal with the malice of another world? Fong Zhou understands all these principles. Fong Zhou looked into her eyes. Do you believe me? The hacker looked back at her. Of course. I don't need to prove this point anymore. If they can put you into the inner world, then I can also go to the outer world. Even the hacker didn't expect her to have such a bold idea, and opened his mouth. How? Fong Zhou raised his hand and nodded his head. Then leaned forward and touched her head with his fingertips. In the hacker's eyes that slightly widened when he reacted. Fong Zhou continued, not yet. We need to observe. Need to wait. Observe the next progress. And wait for a suitable opportunity. The hacker couldn't help but lower his voice. Are you sure this will work? Fong Zhou, I'm not sure. If it's bad, you and I will disappear completely. And we can't come back after restarting. You might as well not have said it. The hacker slumped in the chair. And her listless appearance made her look even more hopeless. She thought she had climbed a mountain. But she didn't expect there would be a higher mountain next. At this moment, Fong Zhou's communication device rang with communication requests. She took a look and found that it was indeed Qi Dao and Su Yunshu who contacted her. No one answered her. So the two of them took turns calling her. It rang for a long time before stopping. It can be seen that they were in a hurry. They must have discovered that the exit command was invalid. Fong Zhou took a look at the message and said to her, I'll go back first. If there is any problem, we will contact you again. Okay. The hacker waved his hand at her weakly. The meeting with the hacker allowed the two to sort out all the current information and decide on the next step. Fong Zhou left Minggang City and returned to the night headquarters in Yincheng. She did not deal with Su Yunshu's affairs first. After leaving the tower, Fong Xuanjiang and others who participated in the operation were hurriedly arranged to return to the headquarters. And they did not know her current situation. When Fong Zhou returned to the headquarters, the first thing he saw was Fong Xuanjiang waiting at the entrance of the passage opened by Shi Xiang. The young man leaned against the wall with his head down, and his figure in the shadow looked a little lonely. When he noticed Fong Zhou coming back, he raised his head and looked at her with his dark eyes. Sister, he called out, but didn't come over. With just one glance, Fong Zhou realized that Fong Xuanjiang already knew that she had recovered her original memory. In this world, he knew Fong Zhou better than anyone else. So before he forgot himself, Fong Zhou believed that Fong Xuanjiang would be able to recognize her. But Fong Zhou never thought of awakening her brother who was devoted to her. As the protagonist, Fong Xuanjiang was the character most severely monitored by the entire external world program. His action mode had the most complete set of programming control. He was the main control character of the player and had an independent line, which was more rigorous than the control perspectives in the central line that jumped at any time. Fong Zhou couldn't wake him up, but would expose himself by approaching his line. As the protagonist, Fong Xuanjiang seemed a little distorted because of his indifference. Compared with Lei Xia, Shi Xiang and others, he was like a real NPC. He only showed some human touch when he encountered her, which was actually a little unreasonable. Recalling everything that happened during this period, Fong Zhou realized that her brother didn't seem to be as simple and ignorant as she thought. Come here. She waved at him. Chapter 177. With Fong Zhou's approach signal, Fong Xuanjiang walked over very obediently, stopped in front of her, and looked at her with his eyes down. What are you doing here? Fong Zhou asked him. Waiting for my sister to come back. I didn't see you when I left, so I don't know your condition. Are you afraid that I will fail? Fong Xuanjiang shook his head. I know my sister will definitely win. After saying that, Fong Zhou didn't respond, and he didn't continue to speak. In her sight, the young man's black head almost fell to the ground. His eyes didn't look at her, revealing his overly white neck. Fong Zhou would be sorry if he didn't question him, as he looked like he had done something wrong. Because Fong Xuanjiang is the protagonist of the game. Even if he realizes the truth of the world, he can't have the memories of the previous restart. So Fong Zhou can probably guess the direction of what he concealed, either related to her or to the Archon. After thinking about it, she gave him a way out and asked proactively, Is there anything you want to tell me? I'm sorry. I kept something from you. Sister. What are they? Before, Sister asked me what happened after I was captured and taken to the tower. I have something I didn't tell you. Fong Xuanjiang paused and said the information he had concealed. The Archon wanted to replace me, just like another person's body occupied by a rat. Fong Zhou glanced sideways. This reminded Fong Zhou that the Archon had no body in this world. He did not replace the bodies and identities of the natives, like the people in the outside world who entered the game. Instead, he used the device set in the tower to connect the spirit of the external body and control a manufactured mechanical body. This must be the reason why Feixing said that he had never seen him leave the tower. Fong Zhou felt that there was only one possibility, that he did not replace the natives. He could not randomly land on other natives like those players. It was impossible for the Archon to replace the natives. It was impossible for him to find a suitable person. The identities of the players ranged from those inside the paradise to those outside the paradise. From high-level transcendence to low-level transcendence. They should have the means to choose the main target to replace. Except for those important supporting characters, who cannot be replaced because they enter the plot line. The existence of Arc is like a bug in the program. Before fixing this bug and getting rid of it, they can no longer make changes to the underlying logic of this world. They can only watch them grow wildly. So that the characters that support the framework of the game world will not fall. The power of the internal world will be transmitted to the external world. And similarly, the power of the external world will affect the internal world. After learning about this operating mode, Arc modified his own death several times through the reputation of external players for this reason. This was her attempt to change the views of the players in the outside world, to break away from the personality given to her by the game officials, and to break away from this body that she couldn't get rid of. Fang Zhou knew that when the connection between the two was completely broken, she would be able to get rid of her own fate and no longer have to worry about dying at any time. Or it was not just her, but this devastated world that would get rid of the control. Thinking of this, Fang Zhou drew his attention back. Those supporting roles could not be replaced. So was it possible to replace Fang Xuanjiang? The Archon could not have been unaware of this, which meant that he thought he could replace Fang Xuanjiang, which explained why the Archon did not kill him, but kept him in a dormant state. Does the Archon want to get Fang Xuanjiang's ability? No. His S-level mind control is much more dangerous than Fang Xuanjiang. Fang Xuanjiang's plot line was closed after he was captured. She didn't think it was a coincidence. It was probably due to external intervention. The Archon's mind control was also ineffective on Fang Xuanjiang. This has nothing to do with whether he is the protagonist or not. It's just that the outside world can't intervene. It doesn't mean that the Archon who has entered the game can't change. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been chasing Fang Zhou. The more Fang Zhou thought about it, the more doubts he felt. Fang Zhou continued to ask, "Why hide this?" Fang Xuanjiang's breathing became slightly heavier. "I'm afraid my sister hates me." This answer was something Fang Zhou had never imagined. In fact, there was no logical connection between the two. "I can't possibly hate you. It's not you who is going to do bad things." Fang Zhou continued, "Why did he choose you? What's the reason?" Fang Xuanjiang did not answer this question directly, but just said, "I was born because of my sister. As long as my sister is still here, I will not disappear." Fang Zhou sighed deeply. How could he not understand that he didn't want to continue talking? This is rare. What kind of answer would make him feel scared? Fang Zhou knew that this would not affect her next purpose and action. So she did not force him to tell the reason. Anyway, she would reveal the final answer herself. "Let's go. Don't stand here." Fang Zhou changed the subject, and saw the young man visibly relieved, and dared to stare at her again. "What are your plans next?" "Sister?" Fang Zhou put his hand on his chin, pretending to think, "There is one thing I haven't done yet." After solving the target in the tower, she did not forget the central arsenal she had discovered earlier. Before they found it, she had to get some back for Yi Ji. Fang Zhou and Fang Xuanjiang first moved to the meeting room organized by the new headquarters, notified Xixiang, Lei Qi and others to come, informed them of the matter, and made the next arrangements. "We need to find a new warehouse with enough space first. The space in our new headquarters is definitely not enough. The weapons in the central arsenal can take up the space of several buildings they are currently in." After confirming the location, Xuanjiang, Lei Qi, and Xixiang will arrange for people to transfer the equipment from the central arsenal. The fact that Lei Qi could take advantage of the central arsenal made him put away his messy sitting posture. He was eager to try and leaned over to ask Fang Zhou, "Are there a lot?" Fang Xuanjiang raised his hand expressionlessly and pressed his face, pushing him back from Fang Zhou's body. "Lei Qi." Fang Zhou thought about the number of warehouses she saw at that time, and showed a smile that would make people feel cold. "There are a lot of them. You can move as many as you can. Don't force yourself." Fang Zhou was not going to directly participate in the help. This kind of operation was more than enough for Xixiang and them to arrange. As for whether the central government would find it in time to stop it, they are now exhausted enough. By the time they have time to pay attention to this side, their operation will probably be completed. After explaining the matter, Fang Zhou asked Xixiang about Su Yunchu's current location, and then recamouflaged as Xu and Zhou to leave the meeting room and find Su Yunshu. In order to invade the tower, most of the core personnel of Yi Ji were transferred by Fang Zhou to participate in the operation a few hours ago. Su Yunshu could sense this subtle atmosphere from then on, and knew that something must have happened. However, before she went to investigate, more important news dominated the third section, so she was in no mood to pay attention to other things. Seeing Fang Zhou, whom she had been looking for, appear, Su Yunshu immediately strode towards Fang Zhou. She looked nervous. If she hadn't estimated that there were other people around, she would have rushed to Fang Zhou. The disappearance of the logout command and various game settings made it difficult for her to maintain a normal state of mind, especially after reading the discussion in the third section and contacting Qi Dao. This state of anxiety became even more serious. Coming to Fang Zhou, Su Yunshu whispered, "Xu and Zhou, where did you go just now? I can't contact you. I was assigned to go on a mission." "What happened?" Fang Zhou asked knowingly. "Hurry up and check if your logout command is still there. I can't find it." "What happened?" Fang Zhou paused for a while, and then made a proper panic and confusion look. Su Yunshu's face became even uglier. I looked at the third section. Everyone's logout command disappeared, and the pain setting also failed. Su Yunshu's ability is regeneration, and the failure of the pain setting is a bolt from the blue for her. This holographic cabin was so real that it was eerie. The only thing that could remind them that this was a game world was these game settings. Now even these disappeared, making everything even more real and chilling. Maybe it's just a glitch? It will be fixed soon. What did Qi Dao say? Hearing her mention Qi Dao, Su Yunshu's face became even uglier. She opened her mouth and didn't know what to say. After a while, she said, "He asked us to be prepared and protect ourselves from death. The message of the logout command this time may not be as simple as a minor glitch." Fang Zhou raised his eyes and glanced at her. From the initial contact, Qi Dao wanted to stop the killing between players, and did this seemingly useless action in the eyes of players. Now, when most players think it's just a glitch, he gave Su Yunshu such a reminder and guidance. Fang Zhou thought he must know something. And she also told Su Yunshu, "He has a point. Protect yourself well. Let's not worry. How about going to have a good sleep?" After confirming the situation with Su Yunshu, it was already 4 o'clock in the morning. It had been nearly 6 hours since the start of this battle, and the Archon had been out of the game for half a day. At this time, Su Yunshu could hardly feel sleepy, but his body would feel tired. Su Yunshu was brought to the paradise by her, and Fang Zhou was not going to arrange for her to participate in any dangerous actions. What was the problem of ensuring her safety? Now it was only the first day they were trapped in this game. As time goes by, their panic will become more and more serious until the day when it breaks out. After separating from Su Yunshu, Fang Zhou finally had time to temporarily enter a blank state. She had received too much information in the past half day, and now there were still things to do. Now the outside world may continue to send players in. Fang Zhou needs to confirm the specific situation and then decide with the hacker how to appease these players. Back to her current residence in Dangang, Fang Zhou washed up first. The warm water fell on her body, which made her spirit relax for a short time. She called up the forum channel connecting to the outside world. "Do you want to open the entrance to the high-dimensional world forum?" Chapter 178. The development of the inner world is now in chaos. Many things have happened in the past 2 or 3 days. The external monitoring has become incomplete after the restart of ARC, which has become a program bug. Through so many previous discussions on the plot in the forum, ARC can be sure that the scope they can currently monitor is mostly about the Central Party. Thinking of this, ARC has entered the forum. As usual, she looked at the time of the latest post on the forum. It showed 5:56 on June 28, 2062. It was only 5 hours since she last entered the forum. The time difference between the inner world and the outer world is still ridiculous and terrifying. In this case, the players trapped in the game will be discovered by the people around them. The time progress in the game can be as short as half a month or as long as several months. After confirming the time, Fang Zhou began to look at the latest hot posts on the homepage. Subject: Li Tao. Is there any informant from Yi Ji in the central government? He seems to have known the news in advance after repeatedly overcoming crisis. Subject: Ah. Sister Zhou finally fought back. Archon. Die. Subject: The plot has progressed to this point. I feel that the Joker line can be completely reopened and changed to the Arc line. Subject: Is there no one in the center who can fight now? Subject: I said that Fong Zhou is now invincible. No one will object. Right? Who else wants to discuss combat power? Through these titles, Fong Zhou can roughly guess which plots have come to the attention of external players. From the siege, an attack after Yi Ji's headquarters was discovered to her stopping people from invading the tower. What is certain is that all the plots about the player landing did not appear in the sight of external players. Otherwise, the role of the player actually affects the main plot. Such important information will definitely cause the game forum to fall into a large-scale discussion. In order to confirm, Fong Zhou picked a few and read the content. Subject: Li Tao. Does the Central Committee have any informants of Yi Ji? Fong Zhou seemed to have known the news in advance when he survived the crisis many times. Main building, as the title says. This time, the Central Committee obtained the location of Yi Ji's headquarters and arranged a suppression operation. I really thought Yi Ji was finished. But I didn't expect Fong Zhou to move the headquarters, as if he knew the news in advance. I feel that there must be a high-ranking informant in the Central Committee who passed the news to her. 1L. I am surprised that Fong Zhou was able to break through this time. They didn't even move completely at that time. The personnel arrangement of the Central Committee this time should be the most luxurious lineup so far. 2L. +1 to the above. The most powerful people in the tower are beyond. YH. All the people have been arranged to go there. 3L. Could it be Xia's prophecy? 4L. No. According to Xia's previous predictions, it can be seen that her predictions need to be guided. In other words, if Fong Zhou and the others did not suspect that the location of the headquarters was exposed, Xia would not predict related events for no reason. Which means that they guessed the location exposure in advance through certain information. 5L. There were informants of Yi Ji in the center before. And even the tower manager Li Wei was one. It seems that there are still some inside. It is not surprising. 6L. What surprised me is that the center has been cleaning up the undercovers for so long. But it has not been cleaned up until now. 7L. It doesn't look like the undercover agent originally arranged. Could it be that some character was turned against the party like Feishing? 14L. Wait a minute. It's better to ask how the Central Committee knew the location of the Yeji headquarters. They have been lurking for so many years without being discovered. How come they were suddenly exposed? Is there an undercover agent from the Central Committee inside Yeji? 15L. The person above reminded me. 16L. Damn. What kind of Mission Impossible and Infernal Affairs is this? 17L. It seems that Fong Zhou still won this duel. It's easy to eliminate the undercover agent inside Yeji. I can't think of any clues from the Central Committee, even if I rack my brains. I feel that she is in the atmosphere this time. 18L. My brain is about to explode. I hope Zhou can share some of his brain with me. 19L. I have a final exam tomorrow. I will take Fong Zhou's brain. 20L. I can't win the office power struggle. I will take Fong Zhou's brain. 21L. Although I don't have anything to compete for, I will also take Fong Zhou's brain plus 10,086. Subject: Ah. Sister Zhou finally fought back. Archon. Die. Main post: Ha. I have waited for this day for too long. Sister Zhou is finally going to kill those people in the tower. I am so excited that I came here to post a thread first. Honestly speaking, as the plot gets deeper and deeper, some of the central government's practices are becoming more and more unbearable. Paradise is completely a rotten class system. I hope Sister Zhou can quickly overthrow the Archon's rule. 1L. I agree. I'll give it a thumbs up if you pass by. 2L. Finally, I can see a plot where the initiative is in the hands of Arc. 3L. I remember that the plot of the internal test did not go into this depth in the central government. Since the Arc entered the Paradise, the plot has changed a lot. 4L. The plot during the internal test did not go to Joker against the central government. It is normal for the public test to have major changes. I feel that the public test with the existing plot is much more interesting than the internal test. 5L. Have you all progressed to this point? 6L. By the way, are we almost at the end of the game? At present, the two factions and forces in the game have begun to face off. 7L. I have been working hard for 2 days since the public test of this game. I am so sleepy. 8L. Go to bed upstairs. I feel like you are going to die suddenly. 9L. I love her strategizing. I am banging my head against the wall for Fong Zhou. 10L. Guess the ending of the game. Fong Zhou overthrows the Archon's rule, becomes the new leader, and starts to rebuild the game? 11L. The above guess is a bit too bold. Fong Zhou's current identity is quite underground. I feel that it is basically impossible for her to switch to politics. 12L. Ha ha underground. I feel that the above is still too conservative. In the eyes of the people, she is actually a criminal. Unless the world experiences a catastrophe, and the order of the entire tower collapses, there is still hope that night. 13L. Art doesn't have this intention. I feel like she's not interested in the position of Archon. 17L. The above poster. Don't be so idealistic when you're playing games. How can a rule of so many years be overthrown in one battle? Even if the Archon dies, there won't be any changes. Let's use some logic. It's not feasible to modify this system just by killing. I don't want to see this game end badly. 18L replied to 17L. I've played games. Can I pray for some happy endings? 19L. I can understand 17L. I agree with the poster's point of view, but I hope the game script can be handled more smoothly. 20L replied to 6L. I feel like there are still many questions that have not been answered. I don't think it will end so soon. 135L original poster. Wait. I'm back after finishing this plot. Sister Joe is so handsome. But I have some questions. What does the Archon say mean? What does so that's how it is mean? How could Fong Zhou forget himself? 136L. I'm confused too. Can you give more plots from Fong Zhou's perspective? And who is the Archon's specific identity? It was never made clear until the end. 137L. Is this your focus? The Archon is not a human. What on earth is it? 138L. Artificial intelligence? Not likely. Is he really dead? 139L. Forget it. I'd rather continue playing the story than to question it here. I'm leaving. Subject. No one objects to my saying that the Ark is now invincible. Right. Who else wants to discuss the combat power? Main building. The number of alien creatures she has contained in the tower this time is astonishing enough. The combat power was almost at the top originally. Now the Archon seems to be dead too. These are really invincible. It feels like it's impossible for the tower to kill her first. 1L. I think no one can compare to her. Mila could still fight before. 2L. If Moore hadn't been so arrogant and cooperated with Agatha in the battle, I think those who were not transferred to Yi would be in danger. 3L. Indeed. Moore's ability should be one of the most outstanding abilities at present. 4L. If Fong Zhou doesn't care about Xiang and the others, I think there is no problem if he wants to leave. 5L. Although I know that the above post is just inferring another possibility, it is very low for the leader of the organization to abandon the members and escape by himself. No matter from which aspect, Fong Zhou will not do such a thing. 12L. Don't make it too serious. This post is mainly to discuss combat power. Don't go off the track. 13L. Is there still a need to discuss? 14L. Well, there is really no need to discuss. After roughly browsing 3 posts and confirming that there is no problem with his guess about the plot, Fong Zhou returned to the homepage to start looking for this target. There are also posts posted by some players who tried the holographic cabin and quit the game on the homepage. Among them, there are complaints about the current players in the game killing each other for the game cabin. Subject. Some people can really do anything for money. They play a good game so dirty? Main post, as the title says. 1L. What happened? 2L. What? There are melons. I will take the front row. 3L. Wherever there are melons, there will be me. 4L. It seems to be about this game cabin test. 5L. Why did the OP disappear? Can I write about it in the main post? 24L. The OP disappeared. I roughly know what the OP is talking about. Let me explain. In this game cabin test, the top 50 players who advance the plot can get the game cabin. Some bad apples don't think about how to advance the plot, but instead trick people out to kill them in the name of forming a team to reduce competition. 34L. So that's how it is. Ah. Such a dirty trick. 35L. Well, how should I put it? Although it's excessive, it's understandable. 36L. If it were me, I would do the same. This game cabin can be exchanged for a lot of money. And I, a civilian, can save many years of hard work. 37L. You can't use such a trick. It's really disgusting. 38L. This is just a game. You don't have to take it too seriously. What's the point of being particular about this and that in the game? This post is almost all quarrels. One group thinks that it's just a game and any tricks can be used. And the other group thinks that even in a game there should be a bottom line. Fong Zhou read a few pages and then exited, continuing to look for what she wanted to read this time. Scrolling down a bit, she finally found the relevant discussion. Just by reading the title, Fong Zhou's guess was settled. Subject: Extra Extra. Chuda Company has officially started to distribute game cabins. There are 10,000 places this time. You can choose to try it first and then buy it. Main building. Is anyone paying attention to this? The official announcement was released in the middle of the night. 1L, oh my god. It's so big? I was really curious after reading so many feedback posts yesterday. So I'll go for it now. 2L, this is too fast. Is this company short of money? 3L, free trial. I'll rush in immediately. 4L, I am so greedy after reading those feedback posts. I thought it would take some time to wait for the official release. But I didn't expect it to be so soon. 5L, everyone is rich. Although the trial is free, I can't afford the compensation if there is any damage. I'm leaving. 23L, why are the words above the same? Did the game company find the water army in the forum? 24L, apart from other things, there are quite a lot of places this time. 25L, this time it is considered to be on sale. I am skeptical about the safety of this upgraded version of my game cabin. After all, it is a new product connected to the brain. Let's wait and see. 26L, the fact that it can enter the market shows that it is definitely safe. After the death of a person before, the relevant departments are quite strict in controlling this aspect. 27L, curiosity overcame my fear. 3. 28L, I have never had such a good game in my life. I will sign up as soon as I can try it. The discussion on this thread is not high at present. It is still early in the outside world. But Fong Zhou knows that not all gamers speak on the game forum. This is only a small number of people. There are more players who hang out on other communication platforms. This post has already attracted a certain amount of discussion in the game forum. And other platforms will only be more, especially through some discussions in the last forum. Fong Zhou knows that this holographic cabin test has attracted the attention of many people who do not play this game. It is not difficult to gather 10,000 registration places in a short time. Many people must have signed up successfully, according to the speed of the previous game cabin distribution. Fong Zhou believes that it will not be long before the game company can deliver the game cabin to them after they successfully sign up. Fong Zhou took a breath, exited the game forum, and began to think about countermeasures. The inner world and the outer world are essentially connected by data, especially after the reputation of external players for her reached a certain limit, strengthening her connection with the outside world. Fong Zhou can control her perspective to choose whether to release it. Not long ago, she also used this method to prevent people around her from being replaced by players, which also shows that the game company cannot control the plots that are released. Although the Archon reviewed her memories through mental control, Fong Zhou, who was also forced to review her memories, knew that those memories were not detailed enough to reveal all her secrets. Those deep details that she wanted to hide in her subconscious must be obtained by invading her mental bottom. With her strong willpower and the situation at that time, the Archon could not do this at all. This means that after she understood their methods, she could completely warn external players not to enter the game by releasing her perspective, and increase the pressure of external investigation on the Chuda Company. There are still 900 players trapped in the game, and the relevant departments only need to conduct investigations to put pressure on them. She quickly determined the direction. Chapter 179. After leaving the forum, Fong Zhou sorted out the perspective information she could release at present. The simplest one is to release her conversation with the hacker, which can quickly help the players in the outside world to sort out the facts. But this will expose the existence of the hacker. The Archon who returned to the outside world will definitely suspect the hacker after reviewing the game. In this case, Fong Zhou is even less likely to provide the Archon with any information about the hacker. So this item is excluded and can only be started from other places. The rest can make the outside players realize that the players who enter the game will enter the main line. The game cabin issued by the game company does not have such a simple plot. There is only the replacement of the rat and the recruitment of the knight. Fong Zhou immediately sorted out the causes and consequences of Shuaoshu's death and the plot of her cooperation with Qi Dao and Su Yunshu during the recruitment. Under this premise, it also includes the farce on the third section that she has seen so far, and intercepted several of the most representative posts and scrolled down. Fong Zhou knew that directly releasing these plots would definitely confuse the players in the outside world. But she was not responsible for whether their so-called plot lines were complete. Her purpose was to warn the players in the outside world, remind them to be vigilant about the game cabin, and let them find that the players who have entered the game cannot wake up this matter, so that no more people will enter the game. After sorting out this information, Fong Zhou released it one by one as her perspective, and conveyed it through the data channel connecting the two worlds. After doing all this, Fong Zhou contacted the hacker. They are indeed planning to send more people from the outside world here, she said. I saw that they issued 10,000 places. 10,000. The hacker couldn't help but shout out. Although she had guessed this number, she didn't expect them to really dare. The hacker calmed down and asked her, "What are you going to do?" Fong Zhou roughly told the hacker about the perspective she released. These can warn people in the outside world. It's up to them whether they believe it or not. Try to stop it if you can. Hearing that she could selectively release her perspective, the hacker's tone was a little complicated. Your connection with the outside world is getting stronger and stronger, because the two worlds are getting closer and closer. If they get any closer, this world will be destroyed. I think this is what the Archon wants to see. Compared with the outside world, the inner world as a game is obviously a low-dimensional world, so that only the inner world will be affected and controlled. The hacker was silent for a moment and said, after a while, I will give them some hints in the third section. As for why it is a while, the time that cannot be exited is still short. Players still have the idea that the outside world will solve this mistake. They hope that they will not do too much because of panic. After time passes, the players in chaos will do some extreme behaviors, and then it will be appropriate to give hints and information. Fong Zhou understood this, and she said, "Okay, you can handle this." After explaining the matter, Fong Zhou cut off the communication with the hacker. Although the plot from her perspective has been released, she cannot get immediate feedback from the outside world. The huge time difference between the two worlds will have countless variables. For now, she can only wait. During the waiting time, Fong Zhou gave herself space to breathe and rest. There will be another tough battle to fight next, which is the final battle. She has been dormant for so long. Even though she received such a huge amount of information in a short period of time, she forced herself to withdraw quickly and entered a full night of sleep to ensure that her mind could function clearly after resting. Her thoughts quickly fell into darkness. The next day, after a night's rest, Fong Zhou's mental fatigue dissipated a lot. After a proper wash, the first thing she did was to enter the third section of the fourth dimension to check the situation. The day after the system settings disappeared, after a whole night of fermentation, the players trapped in the game basically knew about this matter, which had already raised the atmosphere of the third section to the highest level. At this time, the number of new posts in this section was still increasing visibly. With this kind of change, many people put down their work. Even the players who wanted to get the game cabin understood the importance of the matter. Compared with life, the conditions given by the game officials were no longer tempting, especially when the game cabin itself is not safe. It can't be exchanged for money. It's better to take this mistake to the court to get more compensation. Fong Zhou didn't read these topic posts, but took a look at the number of online people above. The number of online people above is also increasing. In just a short period of time, it has increased from about 900 people to more than 2,000 people. The post about the opening of the game cabin that Fong Zhou saw on the game forum was posted an hour before the outside world. But it was unexpected that it had already started outside in just one night. It seems that the perspective story she released has not yet caused external discussion due to the time difference. Fong Zhou went down and looked at the topic posts. There are a large number of players involved. The entire homepage of the third section can only be described in 2 words. Chaos. Really chaos. She randomly picked one and clicked in. Topic: Are you kidding me? Why did the number of online people suddenly increase so much? Are people still posting game cabins outside? Are you crazy? When I woke up, the logout setting was gone. The pane adjustment was gone. And the third section had more than 1,000 new people. Am I dreaming? It's too magical. What are they doing outside? Instead of solving the problem of logout settings, they are still throwing players into the game? I saw the post next door saying that there are 10,000 places this time. New friends. Are your logout settings normal? I just came in. What's going on in this section? What are you talking about? No. I just came in. Take a look at the homepage. New friends. Reply to the friends above. There is no logout setting for new entrants. There are many explosive posts next door. How dare they release the game cabin with such a serious mistake? I really can't figure it out. I think it's weird. Ha ha ha. We won't be locked in here forever. I'm really going crazy. That's good. We don't have to go back and work like slaves for the capitalists. I've been looking forward to the day when the world is destroyed for too long. It seems that everyone is crazy. Subject: everyone calm down. Let's sort out what's going on. The following 2 points can be confirmed. 1. Everyone's game settings have disappeared, including the new players. 2. After we logged out, Chuda Company officially started issuing game cabins, with 10,000 places available. Based on these 2 points, we can draw the third point, that the problem with the game settings this time may not be an ordinary game cabin error, and the timing of their issuing the second batch of game cabins is very subtle. I don't think it's possible that they didn't know about the game cabin error, and the new players' participation was intentional. This raises a new question. Why did the Chuda Company continue to distribute game pods when it knew it was wrong? Help! I have goosebumps. It really doesn't make sense. What on earth do they want to do? I don't want to be trapped in this hellhole. I just want to play it because it's a game. I don't want this world to become reality. Crazy. If I die here, will I really die outside? Is suicide useful? Can I exit the game if I die? I also want to deceive myself that this is just a technical error. But the current situation forces me to start thinking about other possibilities. The players are not stupid. They will naturally summarize based on the existing clues. And the time of the game warehouse distribution is at the same stage. So the time of the second wave of players entering the game is also at the same stage. In the time Fong Zhou read the post, the number of online people on the top increased a lot. This made the players realize the purpose of the game company more quickly. And this was definitely not a mistake caused by a technical error. I'm afraid the hacker didn't expect such chaos to come so quickly. So she had to come forward and give corresponding prompts in advance. Fong Zhou exited and refreshed. And the third section soon had a new pinned post. Chapter 180. The top rule was changed, which was very conspicuous in the entire third section. Fong Zhou went in and looked at the hacker's warning. Main building. I believe everyone has discovered this crisis. The following are a few warnings from me as a person who has experienced it. It is up to you to believe it or not. 1. The failure of the game setting is not a simple cabin error, but a deliberate action by the Chuda Company. 2. This is not a simple game world. Please do not try to return to the outside world by suicide. 3. Please play your role well, and try not to arouse suspicion from the outside world. 4. The third section is not officially built in, and there is no administrator from the outside world of the game here. 5. We are a community of shared destiny. We only have one enemy. Please do not point your sharp knife at your own kind. That is not data, but life. 6. Abolish the original forum rules. This forum can exchange any information. This top post is undoubtedly a thunderclap in the player center. Without looking at the reactions of the players in the forum, Ark can imagine the consequences. This post will definitely push the chaos among the players to a climax faster in a short period of time. In Ark's view, the time when the hacker gave the instructions was just right. Most players have already had doubts. Before the top post appeared, there were more and more radical voices. Not giving information at the right time will make the wrong behavior of the player group continue for a longer time. After fermenting for a while, the posts on the homepage are more about the same question: who is behind the third section? I am really going crazy. What do you mean by the game company doing it deliberately? Don't use suicide means. That is, suicide will affect our real body? This is not a game world. It is not data but life. What does it mean? Is this another world? I have always felt that the realism of this game cabin is so strong that it is scary. This is not a game at all. Doesn't that mean that all the lives here are real? Including the people we replace? The hunters kill living people. Who is managing this section? Since this is not an official built-in section, who is responsible for managing and posting posts? Don't hide behind. Who are you? Since you already knew about the conspiracy of Chuda Company, why didn't you warn us earlier? And you pretended to be the official to open this section. What is your purpose? The entire game setting is invalid. Why can we still enter the section through the panel? How can we believe that the person behind the section is not the administrator? So, if this is not a simple game, Yeji Recruitment is not the channel opened by the official for us? Has the Ark discovered us? Are you kidding us? What should we do? I want to go home. I don't want to stay in this hellhole. Many people can't accept this fact, especially the very small number of hunters who kill players for profit. Most of them are not desperate people who dare to do anything for money. But because this is a game, it is data. So they dare to point their sharp blades at the players. Now tell them that this is not just a game. Who is willing to accept it? Since being stopped by Qi Dao 2 days ago, Miao Qing and her other companion have been locked up in a well-equipped house by Qi Dao. Their power is restricted, and they can't use their transcendence ability. So they haven't been able to escape for 2 days. With their actions restricted and unable to advance the plot, they were all ready to log out and commit suicide. But they didn't expect that the logout would fail earlier. They couldn't do anything else. So they could only learn about the progress through the 3rd section. So Miao Qing also saw the top post and the discussion between players at this time. Miao Qing didn't have time to digest this information. Her mind was in a mess. Her hands couldn't help shaking. She looked at her companions in disbelief. And her voice trembled. Yu Liang? Did you see the top post? Yu Liang was the man who attacked Su Yunshu at that time. Yu Liang was shocked and said, impossible. What nonsense are they talking about? He also couldn't accept this information. When he told Qi Dao, he had said it's just a game. But what if it's more than just a game? He kept denying it. But he began to recall all the details after entering the game. Before this, he had killed 2 players. The heat of their blood and the changes in their bodies, when they burned, became real in his memory. Wow! Yu Liang rushed to the bathroom and vomited crazily on the countertop. Over and over again. Until he was exhausted and couldn't vomit anything. After all, they were just ordinary people living in a peaceful world. Killing was a distant word. Miao Qing was not much better. But her mentality was much better than Yu Liang's. She was pale and relaxed for a while. She didn't have the energy to share with Yu Liang, but continued to read the posts in the 3rd section. She was more concerned about whether they could leave here. She still had relatives in another world that she was worried about. And she had to go home. Finally, Miao Qing walked to the door, where there was a communication device left by Qi Dao that could be used to contact him by leaving a message. She pressed the start button and left a message inside. I am Miao Qing. We already know what is said in the 3rd section. We will not hunt players anymore. You don't have to keep us locked up. Untie us if it is convenient. Thinking of Qi Dao's behavior of stopping them, Miao Qing felt that he must have noticed something at that time. And now he had to thank him for stopping them. Otherwise, they would definitely kill a lot of players in the past 2 days. Not long after, Qi Dao received Miao Qing's message. On the day when the game setting system failed, Qi Dao entered the park through the relationship with his companions in the park to join him. The guy sitting in front of him at this time was Xie Xuan, the new special detachment captain transferred from the tower by the Joint Defense Bureau a while ago. And Su Yunshu was also communicating with them via video in the air. If Fang Zhou saw him, he would understand how Qi Dao's suppressor and the location of the arsenal came from. The original position and current position of the body replaced by Xie Xuan can indeed access these things. The time of the security system upgrade that Wu Yuanbo did not correct in time was sent out by Xie Xuan. Is it Miao Qing? Su Yunshu asked the other end of the screen after listening to Miao Qing's voice. Qi Dao nodded. His face was very ugly. The news of the new top of the 3rd section shocked him a lot. Even though he and Xie Xuan had noticed something wrong before, it was inevitable that it was unreal after it was confirmed. Qi Dao did not doubt Miao Qing. After receiving the message, he remotely controlled their suppressor to unlock it. The suppressor was equipped with GPS, and the 2 of them could not take it away. What should we do now? Will we really be trapped in it? The current development also exceeded Qi Dao's imagination. He contacted Su Yunshu and Xuanzhou today. Su Yunshu was contacted quickly, but there was no news from Xuanzhou. Xie Xuan's body was previously a squad leader in Agatha's elite troops. When he came, he carefully received the original owner's information and knew a lot of information about the tower and the approaching safety zone outside the paradise. But these information were of no use at this time. Xie Xuan shook his head. Now it seems that only the person behind the 3rd section may have some clues. After saying that, he seemed to remember something and looked up at Su Yunshu. Have you figured out the purpose of Yeji's recruitment? Why were the 2 of you arranged to enter the Yeji headquarters? And how did you convey your message to Fang Zhou? Su Yunshu was stunned for a moment. I can't see Fang Zhou at all. And I don't dare to give the message to the members of Yeji casually. It was Xuanzhou who conveyed it. She told me that she had a way to pass the message up. As it turned out, She did it. She didn't tell me how she did it. Since she joined Yeji 2 days ago, she and Xuanzhou have only met once due to internal arrangements. She has not been able to contact the other party's communication equipment. In addition, too many things happened in this day, so Su Yunshu did not think about the twists and turns. Xuanzhou. Zhou. Speed enhancement. It happened that she and Xuanzhou passed the screening of Yeji headquarters after choosing to cooperate with Qidao, and conveyed the news to Fang Zhou, but did not cause Yeji's follow-up investigation. Su Yunshu suddenly thought of Fang Zhou's mimicry ability in the plot and her previous style. Combined with the third sections, this is not a simple game world. Yeji's purpose of recruiting players is not the official set of channels to enter the main line. NPCs are not NPCs, but individuals with self-thinking abilities. An answer was about to come out of Su Yunshu's mouth. She opened her mouth and said to the two people on the other side of the screen, Xuanzhou is likely to be Arc. Qidao also noticed this, and they said in unison, she is. She deliberately gathered the players together. She may know that we are abnormal. After all, there are players landing in Yeji. She may want to use this method to monitor our movements. Su Yunshu murmured and reviewed. As for why she arranged for me to enter the Yeji headquarters, she let us not doubt her identity in the name of teaming up with me. And then met Qidao again. Because Qidao said that there are companions inside the central government who want to team up with us. And she needs to obtain more information about the central government through Qidao. After coming to the answer to this guess, Su Yunshu got goosebumps all over her body. Her heart was beating like thunder, and she was trembling all over. Oh my god! Su Yunshu couldn't finish her words. It's amazing. After they got over the concept that this is a game world and NPC is just NPC, they could connect these things together. If she hadn't known Arc well enough in the game plot, she wouldn't have come up with this answer. Qidao felt a chill in his heart, and he hesitated. But isn't Arc an NPC? As long as we mention game-related topics to NPCs, we will be banned. And why does she just monitor you instead of killing you? Xiejuan said for her. We, the outsiders who invaded this world, should be variables. Unless she knows more. At this time, a multi-person communication request came in, and the communication number above showed two big words, Xuanzhou. Chapter 181. This sudden communication request made the three people fall into silence. Su Yunshu looked at them at the other end of the communicator. Answer it? She stuttered. After a heated analysis, Su Yunshu calmed down quickly after seeing this communication request, as if a bucket of cold water was poured on her. In addition to these clues that could be connected, Su Yunshu also noticed more unreasonable places. She mentioned Arc in front of Xuanzhou more than once, and interpreted her character according to her personal understanding. If Xuanzhou is really Arc, hearing that they not only know her, but also understand her so well, and know so many things about her, and the game and NPC they mentioned, all of these are enough for her to notice more. For these players, it was just a game not long ago, so most of them acted without any cover. It is obvious that in the eyes of the natives, their way of thinking and code of conduct appear to be naive, and there are many flaws. If this is not a simple game, and Arc is not an NPC controlled by a program, she will indeed notice the abnormality as soon as the player lands. In fact, Su Yunshu's guess is not wrong. On the day when Shuaishu was replaced by the player, Arc knew all the truth when the player entered, although Su Yunshu still doesn't know what is going on in this world. The game they play in reality can indeed overlap with this world. Fang Zhou is cautious and smart. Her methods of growing up quickly under the pressure of survival are not comparable to those players who strayed into this world. She will use everything around her to obtain information, and will do everything to eliminate threats. Su Yunshu felt the danger belatedly. When Su Yunshu and Qidao didn't know what to do, Xiejuanti and others made a decision and connected the communication. Another video communication was projected above, and the face of Xuanzhou appeared. Not long ago, Fang Zhou on the other side roughly understood the movements of the third plate and retreated. Her communicator had a record that Qidao and Su Yunshu had contacted her while she was still asleep. Fang Zhou didn't contact them quickly, but she knew exactly what Su Yunshu was doing. Since she brought Su Yunshu back to the headquarters, she would keep an eye on her movements to prevent any unfavorable incidents to her and Yi Ji. All the communication equipment on Su Yunshu was always in a data intrusion state maintained by Fang Zhou. So Fang Zhou knew exactly what they just talked about. They did realize the truth and were now wavering. But Fang Zhou had no intention of showing his hand. Fang Zhou's eyes stopped at Xiejuan. Who are you? Xiejuan replied. I am Qi Dao's companion. Xiejuan. Xiejuan's image soon overlapped with the information Wu Yuanbo gave her. She smiled at the people on the other side of the screen as if nothing had happened. I saw you contacted me this morning. Is it because of the top of the third section? The three of them suddenly realized what was happening. Qi Dao answered her, yes. Have you read the content above? Fang Zhou said, I have read it. The world created by this game cabin is really too real. Don't you think? Su Yunshu said hesitantly, yes, it is really too real. Seeing Fang Zhou's natural attitude and his understanding of the third section, Su Yunshu's originally certain answer suddenly became uncertain. Regardless of whether Xu Yunzhou is Fang Zhou or not, the initiative has never been in the hands of Su Yunshu and the others. As long as Fang Zhou has no intention of showing off, they can't expose her at all. They can only follow the direction she gives. Fang Zhou said meaningfully, try to maintain it according to the tips given above. There is not much we can do. Play our roles well, and wait for a new turn. She was right. There is nothing they can do at present. They can't even find a breakthrough. Unless the behind-the-scenes manager who posted the top post in the third section is found. But how to find the other party? Qi Dao sighed heavily. Next, several people exchanged a few messages tacitly, and then ended the communication. After cutting off the contact with Qi Dao, Fang Zhou no longer paid attention to this matter. Whether it was the internal world or the external world, it would take a certain amount of time to ferment. The number of online people in the third section was still increasing, and the topic posts were increasing like a scrolling screen. The newly joined players were facing this disaster before they started to experience the game. The tips given by the hackers did restrict the actions of most players, but not everyone believed them. There were also many players who would not turn back until they hit the wall, until 3 days after the logout setting became invalid. That is, 2 days after the top post was pinned. The farce in which the players from the outside world kept investing finally stopped. The number of online users stopped growing at this time, and the number displayed above was 5678. It was half of the 10,000 that should a company wanted to invest. It was not because the game officials made any adjustments. Fang Zhou understood that it was because the plot about her perspective that she had released took effect. At about the same time, inside the tower, due to Fang Zhou's invasion of the tower 2 days ago, the central government has been busy dealing with the follow-up events recently. The radiation time of Dangang, the escape of the aliens, and the loss of control over the Paradise data network. The entire Paradise's resistance to the current rulers reached the highest peak since its establishment 20 years ago. More and more dirty things that were once buried underground in the central government were uncovered, waiting for the people's judgment. So that some abnormal events caused by the invasion of players on the other side did not attract more attention from the central government. In order to appease the people, Zhong Piling had to decentralize power, and pushed Wu Yuanbo, who had recently gained the trust of the people, to give speeches to all parties, and began to pretend to announce the reform of the upper level with other family members. Fortunately, after Fang Zhou killed the Archon, she did not continue to put pressure on the central government, which gave the central government a chance to continue breathing. And the work that should be done should still be done. Among them was Agatha, who was defeated by Fang Zhou a few days ago. The recent unnatural spread of the safe zone has forced Agatha, who is in charge of this aspect, to keep an eye on the changes at the edge of the safe zone even at this time. At 5:10 this afternoon, the red spread alarm of the rapid spread of radiation rang out. At the same time, the detection machines set up in the wasteland area were scrapped and sent back the last images to the central system. As the manager of matters outside the safe zone, Agatha received the images sent back at the first time. After seeing the images, her expression suddenly became unbelievable. The speed of the spread of the wasteland is like a man-eating beast, devouring several small shelters on the edge that have not yet reacted. The speed of the thick fog showed the red image of the radiation spread on the detection machine, like ink spreading on rice paper. At this speed, let alone 20 years, I am afraid that in less than 2 months, the safety zone of this world will be reduced to paradise. Chapter 182. Agatha's first reaction was that the data was wrong, which was too ridiculous. Why did the advancement data that had stabilized a few days ago change so dramatically overnight? She called in a few trusted subordinates to look at all the images sent back from the vicinity of the wasteland, and then asked the relevant responsible personnel to calculate the specific data of the reduction of the safe zone based on the existing samples. After a period of observation, they concluded that at the current speed, The safe zone would be able to approach the periphery of the paradise in the 48th day. This also requires ensuring that there will be no more terrifying changes next. Otherwise it may be even faster. Now it was not just Agatha, but also the people involved in calculating the data, who were all in the same state of panic. They could not even come up with a suitable solution for the previous approaching speed, let alone the absurd and urgent situation now. This was simply a blow to the head. After confirming that this was not a simple data error, Agatha quickly passed on the news that was enough to overturn the entire paradise. This was too sudden. This crisis was no less than the arrival of the falling sun. It was completely a new falling sun that came right after, without giving anyone time to react. Originally, because the approaching speed was not strong. These senior executives who had enough time to deal with it also fell into extreme panic after hearing the news. They began to be really scared, and immediately passed the news down layer by layer, gathering all the people who could help together and asking them to come up with a new solution based on the current situation. What can be done in a month? Everyone was at a loss. They tested again and again, sending new detectors to the edge of the wasteland, holding the naive idea that this was just a short-term change. Why is this happening? Everything is obviously getting better. Qianyu, the administrator on the 155th floor, who was responsible for studying matters related to the old world, muttered to himself. Just before we learned that the safe zone was approaching, there were signs that green plants outside the paradise had begun to recover. If Fang Zhou was present, she would recall the scene when Qianyu showed her the last time she came to the paradise to obtain relevant information about the old humans, where plants grown with soil outside the paradise, and half the radiation concentration took root and sprouted. This undoubtedly shows that the world is getting better. The recovery of all things is the first step in the awakening of this world. All things related to the old world are adapting to this new world. And the day when they rebuild their homes will eventually come. In just a short period of time, all hopes seem to be destroyed. And Qianyu, who has been responsible for research in this area, felt confused and at a loss. I will lead the team to investigate the situation at the edge of the wasteland tomorrow and obtain more sample information. Agatha took a deep breath. This speed was too abnormal. Even if there was no hope, they had to try to find the cause. After saying this, she continued, we have to spread this message. There are still many small shelters at the edge of the wasteland. They must be moved to the safe zone. She quickly conveyed this request to the higher-ups. The radiation spread too fast, without specific instruments to detect it. The shelters near the edge of the wasteland would be shrouded in fog without a sound, and those people would die in it without any preparation. The radiation outside the safe zone far exceeds the limit that the human body can currently withstand. Even if it is not an old human, the human body's internal organs will be corroded and die instantly the moment it comes into contact. At present, they have not yet developed relevant equipment that can completely isolate such strong radiation. Even Agatha's exploration outside the safe zone requires her transcendent power. And it is only carried out in the desolate area, not outside the real safe zone. The previous approach to the safe zone was not so urgent, and Agatha could understand that the consortium families in the paradise wanted to conceal the information. But now this degree of spread must be announced to the world. Otherwise, before they find a way to deal with it, humans outside the paradise will die in a short period of time. Agatha felt that these people had the right to know, but her request was naturally rejected. The communication from Zhong Peeling was cold. Have you ever considered what the consequences would be if such news was announced to the world? Everyone outside the paradise will move towards the paradise, and everyone will want to squeeze into the paradise. They will think that the paradise is a land ark that can resist the beasts that devour it. After 20 years of development, many shelters outside the paradise have a certain armed force, and the chaos that such news will cause is unpredictable. In the worst case, they may unite to break through the paradise. Zhong Peeling and others are not worried that the paradise will be broken. Since the fall of the sun, the paradise has been built for so many years, and its outer wall defense cannot be overturned by the weapons currently available. Not to mention that the weapons and equipment outside the park are much behind those in the park, and most of them are still controlled by the central government. But by then, the central government will have to make a decision to eliminate the invaders. They are already overwhelmed by the recent internal chaos, and there will be no benefit in provoking such a war. We can open some quotas for people outside the park, and our land utilization rate can be further improved. Bai Cheng made a suggestion. When this suggestion was rejected, the upper level did not even give a reasonable explanation. before the central government discussed a reasonable solution. Fang Zhou had already made a decision for them. She had already spread the news, giving those on the edge of the wasteland the option of fleeing to Shelter 004. I believe the central government will get the news soon. That group of people definitely want to keep this a secret, the hacker said disdainfully. Things are becoming more and more urgent for follow-up actions. She has now moved to her base in Yanqing. As soon as she got the news, Fang Zhou came to her base and was discussing follow-up actions with her. With Paradise, they believe that even if the outside world is eroded, Paradise can still stand, Fang Zhou said, when he learned that the Archon was about to invest 10,000 people into the game. Combined with the information about the approaching safe zone some time ago, Fang Zhou guessed what the other party wanted to do. This crisis was so fierce that the central government summoned almost all the personnel who could contribute. It was not difficult for Fang Zhou, who had been paying attention to the other party's movements, to obtain their internal information. After the personnel input stopped, the consequences of the invasion of the internal world by the outside world finally appeared. This also shows that there is not much left for Fang Zhou. The number of people online has stopped increasing today, Fang Zhou said. Hacker, I know. What I want to know is your next move. The stop of the number of people is like a start button. The rapid approach of the safe zone is an attack from the outside world. But this start button is also the opportunity that Fang Zhou needs. There is only one way to cut off the connection between the two worlds. Fang Zhou looked at her calmly. You don't really want to. The hacker looked at her in fear. I need to go to the outside world, destroy the source code of the game, and kill the person who created it. Only in this way can the connection between the two worlds be permanently disconnected. As early as the last time they met, Fang Zhou touched her head, and then touched his own head, which actually gave the hacker a direction to think about. That was also the only feasible solution she had considered for so long. Fang Zhou did not say it specifically, and the hacker only guessed based on her actions. You want to use my body and mental control to enter my body in the outside world? She asked for confirmation. Fang Zhou nodded. Seeing her nod, the hacker grabbed his head in despair, messing up his already messy hair even more. Looking like a madman, how can it work? Her body in the outside world is not dead yet. The essence of the game cabin is to connect their heads and achieve this effect through mental investment. Fang Zhou's proposal makes sense, but it is not so simple to do it. Both of them are likely to perish in the boundary between the two worlds. After recovering my memory, I can feel that my mental power has surpassed the ability level brought by the alien creatures themselves, which is enough to ensure that I can break through the boundary between the two worlds. The barrier built in the player's head is the boundary between the two worlds. Fang Zhou sat on the swivel chair in front of her, propped up his knees with his hands, and put his head close to her. The hacker could see her shining eyes, which were the light of freedom. Her tone was very decisive, but her voice was soft. Besides, don't forget that the two worlds are connected not only by your body and the outside world, but also by the connected data world. In other words, Fang Zhou couldn't just find a random player to achieve his goal. It had to be the hacker in her. No one else could do it except the two of them. Only they could access the outside world through data connection. You know, we don't have more time. Since being trapped in the inner world, the hacker has also tried many times to connect the two worlds, but they have undoubtedly failed. She once felt a brief sense of falling into darkness and nothingness. The sinking of consciousness and the endless road. Just feeling it for a few seconds is enough to kill all her courage. The hacker wants to leave here and return to her own world. But the feeling of being trapped forever between the boundaries of the two worlds makes her feel scared. For a moment, she couldn't even tell whether it was being trapped here that made her suffer, or the possible consequences of failure that made her suffer. But looking at Fang Zhou's eyes, the hacker's breathing gradually became heavier. Her lips moved, and she couldn't say no at all. She wanted to be freed from this abyss. After a while, she gritted her teeth and said, I know. It seemed that Fang Zhou had expected her to answer affirmatively. She did not show enough surprise, but smiled at her as if it was natural. With the mentality of trying, the hacker realized something more difficult. Even if you enter the outside world through me and control my body, how do you find the source code? What means do you use? Entering the outside world also means that the power of the alien creature in Fang Zhou's body will disappear. Besides, I am not sure what state my body in the outside world is in. There are many things they need to consider. According to the events in the outside world, the time when the hacker entered the game is the time when the second test of the game started. It has been several months since the timeline of the outside world. The body has not been active for several months. How to find the source code. How to destroy the source code. And kill the person who created the source code? In any case, this is a fantasy, since the hacker can think of it. Fong Zhou, who has been prepared for a long time, cannot have not considered these issues. But she has a guess that must be confirmed by the outside world. This is indeed a gamble with a very low probability. Fong Zhou said, "Are you willing to bet all your chips?" The hacker felt that she was really crazy. She had stayed here for too long, and her mind was a little abnormal. So she would bet with Fong Zhou on this illusory answer. She heard her own voice. "I do." Chapter 183. After getting the hacker's answer, Fong Zhou began to prepare for the journey to the outside world. The speed of the wasteland spreading was too fast. In order to minimize the damage to this world, and also to prevent the changes in the player group during this period, she had to speed up. In addition, the outside world and the inner world themselves have an exaggerated time difference. If she can successfully go to the outside world, she must also count the time spent after entering the outside world. Otherwise, it would be meaningless if she stayed in the outside world for too long and the inner world had already reached the end. Back to the headquarters of Yeji, Fong Zhou went to the experimental floor to find the doctor. The doctor was in the laboratory at the end of the experimental floor. After Fong Zhou entered, he could see two brand new hibernation capsules placed next to each other. Seeing her coming, the doctor raised his chin to her. "Check the equipment you asked for." Fong Zhou took a general look and confirmed that the two hibernation capsules could operate normally. "What do you want this thing for?" the doctor asked. "Save the world," Fong Zhou joked. The doctor gave her a speechless look. She was responsible for bringing the things, and there were other things to do, so he was not interested in exploring. The day after leaving the tower, Fong Zhou asked the doctor to find a way to get two hibernation capsules, just to prepare for the next action. If she succeeds, she must at least keep her body functioning normally during the time she loses control of this body. The time difference between the two worlds has never been specifically converted, so Fong Zhou doesn't know how long it will take. From a few days to 10 days or half a month. During this time, she needs someone she trusts to ensure the safety of her and the hacker. After the doctor left, she contacted Fang Xuanjiang, Lei Chia and Li Baiji, and asked them to come to the laboratory. The three people who received the message came very quickly, especially Fang Xuanjiang, who seemed to have noticed it long ago and arrived in front of her almost the next second after she sent the message. Without letting Fang Zhou wait for long, "Sister." The young man's eyes first fell on her, then swept across the hibernation capsule arranged on the side, and the emotions in his dark eyes were hard to discern. "You came so soon?" Fong Zhou sat on the side with a communicator, browsing some information on the current Paradise network. Fong Xuanjiang walked to her side. "I guessed that sister would call me." Fong Zhou glanced at him and said, "Wait for Li Baiji and the others." After a while, Lei Chia and Li Baiji also rushed over one after another. They have been busy emptying the central arsenal these 2 days. They have found a suitable warehouse and are ready to act today. Lei Chia asked first, "What's the matter?" Fong Zhou projected the information he got from the tower in the air. "If nothing unexpected happens, this world will be destroyed soon." "Reiki?" Reiki held his forehead, paused, and said with a headache, "Wait a minute. Let me digest this news." Li Baiji looked at the information released by Fong Zhou seriously, and his expression gradually became shocked. The data sorted by the central government is very intuitive. Even if you are not related personnel, you can understand it. I know you have been paying attention to those strange members these days, and you must have a lot of doubts." Fong Zhou looked at Reiki, and the expression on his face was put away. In the past few days, regarding the surveillance of the players required by the Ark, Reiki and his team have actually vaguely guessed part of the truth, especially after the game settings were invalidated. The original setting of cannot tell NPC anything about the game was also invalidated. In a sense, it also shows the Archon's determination to destroy this world. In his eyes, he has to destroy the current world and restart it anyway, and it will return to normal after the chaotic restart. With so many abnormal times, with Reiki's keenness and his intelligence monitoring network, it is probably not difficult to piece together the truth through these recent events. "I thought you wouldn't tell us." His tone was somewhat complaining. "Why did you change your mind?" "Whether my sister wants to say it or not is her freedom." Fong Xuanjiang interrupted his accumulated emotions coldly. Lei Chia. Fang Zhou pinched Fang Xuanjiang's palm. I need you to watch over me from now on. To ensure my safety, and to ensure the operation of Yeji in the near future. This was the first time Fang Zhou asked them for protection. From her words, Lei Chia could already sense how dangerous what she wanted to do. And he put away the casual expression on his face and frowned. Fang Xuanjiang looked down at her with a sense of awareness, as if he wanted to say something to stop her. But in the end, he just said, I will protect my sister. Li Baiji's information is not as comprehensive as Raikiri's, but she will do her best to obey ARC's orders. Sister, when will it start? Today. Outside world. Game forum. Topic. The latest 3-party perspective on ARC. Have you seen it? Main post, as the title says. I don't know what to say. Is this true? Is it a plot designed by the game officials? Or, hey, it feels so weird. 1L, what's going on? Is there finally a new perspective on ARC? 2L, a new 3-party perspective on ARC? I'm going to go right now. 3L, it's too explosive. I have the same reaction as the original poster. I don't know what's going on at all. I'm confused. 4L, are there any friends around you who have grabbed the game cabin? Just check the other party's status, and you will know whether it is true or not. 5L, how can it be true? Isn't the game plot controlled by the official? What good does it do for them to release this kind of self-surrendering plot? 6L, I just signed up for the new game cabin opening quota. The game cabin was sent to me almost immediately after I passed. I originally thought I would try it out later, but now I don't dare to enter at all. 7L, the plot released from this perspective is completely incompatible with the main plot. Is it an Easter egg to play tricks on us? 8L, if I hadn't looked at the date, I would have thought today was April Fool's Day. Anyway, I don't think this is the main plot. Those players talked about the game and her in front of Fang Zhou. What kind of cold humor is this? NPC Awakening War? 9L, weird. After watching it, I felt that it was very weird. Did the game finally crash? 10L, has anyone reported it to the relevant department? Anyway, I think it is necessary to investigate this company. 11L, I feel that my brain is not enough, but the last picture from the ARC perspective scared me a little. 12L, the plot line is a bit far from here. Can anyone tell me what happened? 13L replied to 14L, through the ARC perspective. You can see that the players who enter the game through the game cabin are truly involved in the main storyline. And now they are trapped in the game and can't get out. Then someone uploaded a video. At the end of the 3-way perspective of ARC, she looked up at the screen in the latest timeline, as if breaking the fourth wall, warning the players who have not yet entered the game. 34L. I was sweating coldly, and my heart was tingling. 35L, NPC Awakening? 36L, thinking of the feedback from people who have experienced the game cabin before. All of them were real beyond imagination. 37L, what do you mean by the above? Do you want to say that the game world is another real world? 38L, this is a bit too much. 57L, the game server is closed. Who can still enter the game? 56L, no, I can't get in anymore. Subject, get the game cabin. Friends who haven't entered the game yet. Don't go in. Don't go in. Main building, first of all. I don't play this game. But a roommate got a spot in the game cabin a few days ago. After seeing the latest discussion, I went to check his status with another roommate. What is certain is that the external emergency escape setting of the game cabin has no response at all. Because it is a device connected to the brain. We dare not act rashly now. We have called the police and are waiting for the result of the police's handling. It is not clear whether the game cabin is malfunctioning or the first company did it intentionally. The game cabin is definitely a safety hazard. Those who haven't entered it yet should not enter it again. 1L. The first person to speak out is here. Is it true? Is it an isolated case? 2L. Forget it. I'll wait and see the result before deciding whether to go in or not. My life is more important. 3L. Upstairs. It's not an isolated case. Currently, all the people who have entered the game cabin are unable to get out normally. Go to other communication platforms to check. This matter has been trending. The relevant departments must have gone to Chuda Company to investigate. It is estimated that the results will be out in half a day. 4L. I am stunned by this development. 5L. Chuda Company has distributed 10,000 game cabins today. How many people are locked up in them? 6L. It's a bit creepy. On the other side, As soon as the ARC perspective was released, Jiang Chuda used means to suspend the game server. But many people had already seen it. A large-scale discussion was overwhelming in a short period of time. And the relevant departments also followed. In the room where Su woke up at first, Jiang Chuda, who was in trouble, was calm. The communicator connected to him kept popping up call reminders. And he was not worried about the police coming to his door. Shi-Han couldn't help but say, how did she affect the outside world? She was able to transmit the plot of a specific perspective to the central server. So they were caught in a trap. And the already tight time was compressed again. At this moment, Jiang Chuda suddenly said, import my data in. I want to go into the game again. Chapter 184. Hearing Jiang Chuda's words, Shi-Han said, how do you get in? The previous carrier has been destroyed. Before the control is taken back, you have no spiritual carrier that can enter. And, Jiang Chuda said, Shi-Han seemed to remember something. You want to? Jiang Chuda, yes. Following Jiang Chuda's decision this time, they have no way out. Shi-Han said nothing more. But her straight body and stiff hands can show her worry and fear. More and more numbers of contacts popped up. She looked down and saw that there were a few numbers that had to be dealt with. Shi-Han walked aside and answered them. As soon as the call was connected, angry questions came from the other end. Not long after, when Shi-Han came back, the tension in her body had dissipated a lot. But her face was not good. Seeing her come back, Jiang Chuda said, it seems that there is enough time. Shi-Han interrupted him. Those investors are very unhappy. This incident has caused too much trouble and alarmed the relevant departments. They asked you to hand over the source code. Otherwise, they will not continue to help you deal with the follow-up. Jiang Chuda found it funny. Do they think I'm stupid? As long as the control is in our hands, those people will always rush to help and help us launch the right scapegoat. After he finished speaking, he took a breath. It was not convenient for him to debug the equipment alone. Shi-Han didn't say anything else, but watched for a while, and finally stepped forward to help him debug these messy pipes to the right position. After everything was ready, Jiang Chuda asked, have you found the tester? Yes. I have sent someone there in advance. Hearing the affirmative answer, Jiang Chuda took a last look at the time. It is now 12:23 on June 28th. He laid back in the game cabin. After the successful startup, a blue reading bar appeared in the lower right corner of the screen of the middle console, slowly moving forward one grid. After making all the preparatory preparations, Fong Zhou contacted the hacker and asked Shi Xiang to open the channel and transfer her to the night headquarters. While waiting, Fong Zhou released Tucker from his body and asked him to guard here with Fong Xuanjiang and others. Fong Zhou didn't dare to release other alien creatures, because she was not sure whether these alien creatures she had subdued would show other abnormalities, because they could not sense their master after her spirit went to another world. What she was going to do next was too important, and she didn't dare to bet on the changes. Only Tucker was different from other alien creatures. Even if she lost her instructions, it could respond. She arranged Rachel and Tucker outside, leaving only Fong Xuanjiang indoors. When the hacker arrived, there were only Fong Zhou and Fong Xuanjiang in the empty room. Seeing a strange face, Fong Xuanjiang looked at her up and down with vigilance. As the first tester, the hacker certainly knew Fong Xuanjiang and knew that he was an absolutely trustworthy character for Fong Zhou. She just stopped at a glance and didn't pay too much attention to him. The hacker looked around and saw the 2 hibernation capsules prepared by ARC and some computer equipment around. I'm here. ARC looked up at her. She walked quickly towards ARC, and then showed her surprise at being contacted so quickly. And her tone was slightly higher. We have only been separated for less than half an hour. The hacker didn't expect ARC to act so quickly. She thought she would have to wait for a while before taking action. She was not mentally prepared at all. ARC smiled and she joked, you won't be so scared that you will regret it. Right? The hacker took a breath. If you are not afraid, what should I be afraid of? Just after separating from Fong Zhou, the hacker began to seriously think about the attempt she proposed. Carefully, it was Fong Zhou who had to cross the boundary between the 2 worlds to go to another world. Not her. If this attempt really failed, she would be more likely to be left here forever. The only one who would really fall into the boundary between the worlds was Fong Zhou, who wanted to cross it. At that time, even if the world was restarted, she would not be able to come back. The person who should really feel fear was extremely determined in the face of the goal, without revealing the slightest sign of wavering. What reason did she have to retreat? The hacker glanced at Fang Xuanjiang on the side, unsure whether to avoid him. Seeing that Fang Zhou had no intention of sending him away, he said directly, "Are you sure you have thought it through? You may disappear and fall into nothingness, which will be 100 times more painful than death. Do I have any other ideas?" Fang Zhou did not stop, and after confirming that he was going to start, he turned on the 2 hibernation capsules and adjusted them to the running mode. After confirming that all preparations were complete, Fang Zhou glanced at the time. "I won't say more. Let's get started." She did not discuss this issue with the hacker too much, because no matter how much she said, it would not be as practical as action. She stretched out her hand to the hacker and motioned her to come over. The hacker sighed, and she did not hesitate. She followed Fang Zhou into the adjacent hibernation capsule and handed her hand to shake with her. "Sister," Fang Xuanjiang, who had not interrupted, suddenly shouted at this time. He stood beside Fang Zhou and watched all her actions. Fang Zhou did not avoid him in all the conversations, nor did he explain to him, but let him stay inside, leaving everything behind to him. "What's wrong?" Fang Zhou looked at him, and met the pair of black eyes that were always calm, but now full of emotions. "I'll wait for you to come back." "Of course I will come back." Fang Zhou smiled at him. The whole space was extremely quiet, with only the slight humming sound of these devices running. Fang Zhou took the hacker's hand without hesitation. She could feel that the hacker couldn't help but tremble slightly because of nervousness, because of the fear of facing the unknown, and also because of the excitement of getting the answer. Fang Zhou closed his eyes, gathered his spirit together, and drove it into the hacker's head, facing her mental invasion. The hacker opened his mental space to her and let her explore it. This process was undoubtedly painful. The hacker kept tightening her grip on Fang Zhou's hand. Veins popped out of her forehead. Her body stiffened, and she couldn't help but scream, "Ah!" Even so, she never let go of Fang Zhou's hand. Soon, Fang Zhou came into contact with the barrier built in the hacker's head. This barrier completely blocked her out. Fang Zhou only got a little closer and felt the pain of several times the backlash, which was eating away at her spirit in the opposite direction. Almost no one could bear this kind of pain. Fang Zhou could feel the blood in her mouth. She did not retreat, but endured the pain of such backlash and attacked the barrier in one go. She kept hitting, retreating, and hitting again, over and over again. A loud bang exploded in her head, and her condensed spirit body exploded with it. Fang Zhou finally broke through this barrier, and she also lost control of her own way. Her consciousness began to sink and sink because of the dispersion of her spirit body. She entered another space. The blue digital code was like a turbulent river, carrying Fang Zhou's scattered spirit in different directions. Fang Zhou felt that she couldn't breathe. She lost all her perception and was about to drown in this river. Those spirits that collapsed in different directions came into contact with different codes, showing her countless lives and countless restarts and destructions of the world. She saw Fang Xuanjiang, Lu Filan, and Wan Chao, those who lived and died on the road she had to pass. Fang Zhou tried to piece herself together again, but the scattered power was not enough to control the flow in such a river. Suddenly, this river composed of codes was controlled to stop flowing, and Fang Zhou's scattered spirits broke away from the resistance and gathered together again, forming a force that could go upstream. Fang Zhou saw the figure of the hacker at the end. She turned around and fell on the river that started to flow again, leaving in the opposite direction of the hacker. After an unknown amount of time, Fang Zhou was exhausted, and fatigue almost swallowed her, persuading her to continue falling. She suddenly broke free and opened her eyes. Chapter 185. Everything in Fang Zhou's sight was foggy, with blurry shadows projected on her retina. She felt her body being pushed by something and her head falling heavily. Click. When she woke up, Fang Zhou heard the sound of an instrument being untied. She raised her hand with difficulty and pulled off the device fixed on her head with all her strength. The mental oppression suddenly left. After pulling off the device fixed on her head, the thing that originally pushed her body to move stopped working, and inertia made her take a step forward. She stepped on empty air and fell forward uncontrollably. Bang! And fell to the ground. She was a little dazed by the fall. This body could not exert any strength for a while. She could only keep this posture and lie on the ground to cushion the impact. After a few seconds, Fang Zhou's vision gradually became clear, and he could see the surrounding environment clearly. The space she was in was not large. It seemed that in order to prevent external prying, there was only one window at a higher position in the whole room, and the light falling in was just enough to illuminate the layout of the room. On the right-hand side was the connecting helmet of the game cabin that she had just pulled off her head. It had been removed from the game cabin separately, and the line was connected to the device behind her. Fong Zhou turned his head and squinted his eyes to look at it. It was an upright walking aid. The sense of physical movement that she had vaguely felt just now was driven by it. There is still a retention needle in the hand of this body, which is probably used to inject nutrient solution. The technology level of the outside world is naturally not as good as that of the inside world. There is no such thing as a hibernation capsule. It is much more troublesome to maintain the muscle activity of a body that cannot move. All the equipment placed in this small room are to help this body maintain its functions. There is only a single bed that can accommodate one person to sleep and some daily necessities on one side. Fong Zhou can be sure that she has entered the hacker's body and came to the outside world. She succeeded. The gushing emotions in her heart were suppressed by her. The hacker slept for too long and her body muscles degenerated. Even if someone has been using reconstruction facilities to keep her muscles active during her sleep, the sequelae brought by this period of time cannot be ignored. There was not enough time for Fong Zhou to recover. She gritted her teeth to control her body and climbed up by holding on to a chair. She could not coordinate the limbs of this body yet, and it took a long time just to stand up. But this was much better than Fong Zhou expected. At least this body was still active. There was no one in the room, and the people who had been helping the hacker seemed to have left in a hurry. Many things in the room were still in operation. This also gave Fong Zhou enough space to move, eliminating the need to deal with it. Fong Zhou adapted to this body, and after a few minutes, she was sweating profusely. After barely recovering her ability to move, she stumbled to open the door of this room and entered the living room outside. The living room was still small. In addition to the room she had just left, there was another room with a closed door across from her. In the middle of the living room was a small coffee table with some papers scattered on it. Fong Zhou walked over slowly, and the first thing he saw was a photo frame on the coffee table. The photo showed two women who looked very similar. The younger one had a sullen face, while the older one wore a white coat and hugged her with a smile on her face. Fong Zhou guessed that this should be the hacker and her mother. She picked up the papers on the coffee table. They were all interviews cut from magazines and newspapers. The content inside was all about two companies. One was First Game, and the other was Coin Technology. Although Fong Zhou didn't know what this Coin Technology was, she knew about the Chuda Game Company, according to the clues obtained in the forum. This game company was a small and unknown company before, and Old Wasteland was its first work. A small company with nothing to rely on could not have developed such a game cabin, let alone the financial resources to launch tens of thousands of expensive game cabins, which only shows that it has a strong backer behind it. Not to mention that so many testers in this group of hackers were trapped in the game. It would be difficult to completely suppress this matter without some means. The hacker once told her that she was not a tester of the Chuda game, but an employee of a technology company. Fong Zhou took a look at the content above. Keen Company has achieved new success and launched a new generation of artificial assistance equipment. Exclusive interview with Keen Technology CEO, leading the way in technology. The Rising Star First Game. The first work Old Wasteland is about to be officially launched. There are quite a few of these papers, which shows that the other party has been secretly investigating these things. However, in this digital age, there is not much information that can be obtained from paper media magazines, which is not as comprehensive as the information searched on the internet. The other party cut these out probably because they are desperate and unwilling to let go of any clues. Fong Zhou put down the papers and went into another bedroom through the living room without wasting time. She found a loose hooded sweater and a cap in the closet and put them on. The shadow reflected in the mirror could only see the pale and thin chin, and the brim of the hat covered half of the face. She was ready to find the Archon. After coming to the outside world, the alien creatures in Fong Zhou's body disappeared, as a matter of course. She could not drive the alien creatures in another world, let alone use the power of those alien creatures. Without power, how to find the Archon in the vast sea of people without exposing herself? How to get the source code? These are the problems she needs to face after coming to the outside world. And they are also the doubts raised by the hacker at the beginning. If she can't even take this step, the next action is even more unrealistic. Fong Zhou closed her eyes. Her thoughts began to diverge. and the only sound in the whole space was the beating of her heart. Not long after, star-shaped lights began to appear in the dark vision, and countless data routes rose from different directions in an instant, forming a huge data network densely around. Among them, there was a blue light from a distance, which almost swallowed up all the data routes she saw. Like a bright light guiding the direction, Fang Zhou opened her eyes, and the light in her eyes was shining. She won the bet. In the inner world, she needed to use the power of the wall rat to invade the data. But she saw the game form based on the data boundary between the two worlds, and this was never done by the power of the wall rat. When she passed through the boundary of data and came to the outside world, the bug power obtained by the connection between the two worlds became even stronger, and the spiritual body that did not belong to this world could come and go freely in the data world. The brightest light in the data world, if nothing unexpected happened, was the source code that Ark was looking for. It was the channel between the two worlds, so bright that it was in the data boundary that Ark could see. She could completely rely on this to find the location of the running source code. Although she did not have the abilities of those alien creatures, she could view the surrounding monitoring network and invade the data network through the data world. What surprised Fang Zhou even more was that she could radiate spiritual power when she tried to enter the data network, and the gathered spiritual body became stronger after breaking the barrier. If nothing unexpected happened, she could even control the human beings in the outside world mentally. Fang Zhou's heart accelerated slightly. It was enough. These two powers were enough. Click. At this moment, the sound of unlocking came from the door. Is the hacker's mother back? Fang Zhou moved to the door of the living room. The door lock of the outer door needs to be recognized by face recognition. The person at the door obviously did not meet this condition, so he did not open it immediately. She did not act rashly, but extracted the surrounding monitoring network. According to the distribution of this density of data routes, her current location is likely to be in a central city with a large flow of people. There are surveillance cameras installed in the corridors and doors of the nearest floors, and Fang Zhou can see their real-time surveillance images. The other party didn't expect that they could be seen through the corridor surveillance inside, and only avoided the surveillance camera on the door lock. There are a total of 3 people staying in front of the door of this room, wearing casual clothes, masks and hats, and their faces can't be seen clearly. Judging from their figures, Fang Zhou can be sure that none of these people is the hacker's mother. The Archon has already noticed that the existence of the hacker in the inner world is related to the outside world. It is only a matter of time to find her existence. These people are mostly sent by the other party. According to the hasty layout of the room when she came, the hacker's mother is likely to be lured away by the other party. Fang Zhou was somewhat glad that she arrived at the right time. If she had come a step later, she would have failed. The noise outside the door stopped, and the door lock was forcibly cracked, causing it to sound an alarm to the inside. The heavy door suddenly opened, and one of them led the way in. He took only one step, and his movements suddenly stopped, standing in front of the door in a daze. The 2 companions behind him pushed him in confusion and urged him, "What are you doing here? Hurry up and get in." Their urging was useless, and they did not get the response they deserved. When they realized something was wrong, they also fell into a state of stiffness with the companion in front of them. Fang Zhou walked out from one side of the door. "Who sent you? What do you want you to do?" "We don't know. They just said they would give us money if we get rid of the people in this house." She frowned slightly, and quickly got the identities of these people through questioning. These 3 people had a lot of criminal records, and knew nothing about the people behind the scenes. They were just scapegoats sent here. They couldn't get any information about the Archon, and the forces behind him from their mouths. Fang Zhou didn't waste time on these people. They came to her door, and saved her a lot of trouble. She looted all the weapons they carried, including 2 daggers, a small, and the keys and communicators of their scooters. Then she gave the 3 people a final instruction: "Leave here now. In half an hour. Go to the police station and turn yourself in to explain your past crimes." Following her instructions, the 3 people turned around and left in a daze. After they left, Fang Zhou deleted the 3 figures captured by the surveillance camera in the corridor from the record, leaving only the surveillance record on the door lock. She left here with the hacker's body, and the door lock showed signs of being damaged again. The surveillance record in the door lock was just to reassure the hacker's mother, who had temporarily left, so that she realized that she had not had an accident. Fang Zhou took the elevator to the first floor and walked out of the floor. The noisy sound of traffic filled her ears, and when she came out, The bright sunshine was tilted in, and the slightly warm temperature fell on her skin, which was completely different from the temperatureless radiation in the paradise. This world was full of vitality, making her feel a little hazy in trance. Fong Zhou found the car that the three people parked nearby, re-entered the data world of this world, found a detailed map and the location of the source code currently running. Fong Zhou saw that the location of the running source code was not the location of Chuda Game Company shown on the official map. It was a distance away from her, but at least it was in the same city. Based on her understanding of the Archon and her guess about the power behind Chuda Company, he would never easily hand over such an important thing to others. Otherwise those people would not allow him to do such a crazy thing. As long as the source code is found, the Archon can be found. Before leaving, Fong Zhou glanced at the time in the car, which showed 10:45 on June 28th. Chapter 186. Fong Zhou drove out of the residential area, came out of the avenue, and drove a distance to the central square. She could see the large screen in the square to the south from a distance. At present, it takes half of the city to move from her location to the source code. Fong Zhou is a person from the inner world. After the fall of the sun, the order of the whole world is in a mess. Only the inner sea of the paradise maintains the superficial order. At most, she compares the rules of the old world with the outside world. Their specific operation methods and rules are mostly in her blind spot. She can only quickly extract relevant keywords from the data network and calculate the normal driving speed of the vehicle and the time required for other means of transportation to reach the destination. It takes about an hour to drive there, and taking the tram is half an hour faster than driving. But she needs to take into account the identity of the ticket buyer, the transfer time, and whether this body will cause other accidents when entering the crowd. This also includes whether it will have an impact on hackers in the future. The overall operation takes no less time than if she drove the car there, and it is even more cumbersome. After calculating the answer, Fong Zhou had no time to hesitate and followed the map to drive to the location of the source code. After leaving the central area, the number of pedestrians began to decrease. Fong Zhou had the spare energy to devote part of his attention to a specific data network and search for the keyword Old Wasteland, Game Cabin, and First Game. The number of online users in the inner world has stopped increasing, indicating that the security of the game cabin has been questioned. She needs to know the direction of public opinion in the outside world on this matter, and whether the relevant departments have taken corresponding measures. There are a lot of entries, almost all of which came out in these 2 hours. First Game. The scam of the upgraded game cabin, the biggest technical mistake of this century. With tens of thousands of victims. The huge conspiracy behind the game cabin of Old Wasteland? What is the purpose of the main messenger? Death reminder from the game NPC. Is this the awakening of AI or a new hype method? In addition to the original mistake of Chuda Company, what caused the discussion among netizens in the outside world was also the way to expose this matter, which was the prompt from the in-game character Arc. Arc did not pay too much attention to these discussions, but focused on useful information. The omnipotent netizens had already dug out the current shareholders and persons in charge of Chuda Company before the official announcement came out, and their information was displayed carelessly on the internet search. Arc roughly browsed it, and she knew at a glance that it was wrong. There was no Archon among these people. This also shows that no matter how much the outside world investigates, it is impossible to find out the real mastermind. Perhaps it is expected that there will be such a day. The Archon is likely to have no direct connection with the Chuda Game Company to avoid investigation by relevant departments. 1 hour and 20 minutes later, Fong Zhou arrived near the location of the source code. She parked the car and looked up at the building in front of her with a bit of surprise in her eyes. Its location was completely beyond Fong Zhou's expectations. It was neither a server built elsewhere by Chuda Company nor a subsidiary of Cohen Technology, but a sanatorium located on the edge of the city. Behind the gate of the wall were several luxuriously built floors, and the reception hall was in the middle area. Fong Zhou got off the car and entered through the open door. There were large square windows arranged in an orderly manner on several white buildings, with a total of 8 floors, covering a large area, surrounded by dense plants, and the sun near noon fell scorchingly on them. From the middle position to the south, you can see the lake in the distance. As a sanatorium, it is in a very good environment. People coming and going need to register their identities. The security guard at the door saw her and was about to call a halt, but the next second he looked away as if he had never seen anyone enter. Being able to use mental control in the outside world saved Fang Zhou from the troubles she had to deal with during her infiltration. She didn't need to hide her whereabouts too much. People who saw her would forget her existence. And the footage captured by the camera would be deleted silently. But it would be much more troublesome to delete the existence of too many people. Fang Zhou tried to walk to the less crowded path and move towards the direction of the source code that could be seen. Finally, Fang Zhou stopped in front of building number 4 at the southernmost end. She looked up, and the blue light in the data world connected to the room in the left corner of the top floor. That was where she was going. Fang Zhou first hacked into all the surveillance cameras in this building to observe the internal situation. Unlike other floors, there were basically no relevant employees patrolling in the corridors of this building. And the corridors on the top floor were empty. After entering this building, Fang Zhou could clearly feel that the surrounding protection settings were different from those of the other buildings. There were almost no blind spots in the surveillance arrangement, and comprehensive face detection and full-body scans were required to enter. It was not easy for suspicious people to enter. But these things were useless in the eyes of Fang Zhou, who could use data intrusion. She deleted the surveillance footage of her. In this world without superpowers, there was no way to stop Fang Zhou's invasion. She took the elevator on the side and came to the top floor unimpeded, and came to the door of the room in the corner. From the outside, it was exactly the same as all the rooms on other floors, without any abnormality. Fortunately, the door locks used in this world are almost all smart door locks. Otherwise it would be difficult for the hacker Fang Zhou was in the current physical state to break into the door. Click. The door of the room was opened. After entering the door, there is a spacious living room with some normal-looking recuperation facilities. There are 2 smart folding wheelchairs on one side. The overall setting is very low, not like it is for normal standing adults. There is a huge window on the south wall, through which you can see the scenery outside. There is a bathroom on the right-hand side of the door, and on the left-hand side there seems to be a corridor leading to the bedroom. Fang Zhou entered through it, and saw the eye-catching door on the right. It was a heavy and hard intelligent iron door. The camera at the door was aimed at the intruder. The internal system had complex circuits, and could immediately determine whether the intruder was a registered person who could enter and exit. Fang Zhou cut off the information it wanted to transmit outward, controlled the internal computing program to turn it to the security authentication mode, and opened it. Without her pushing, it automatically moved to the side. The last line of defense was breached, but the owner inside was unaware. The room was decorated in cold, hard metallic tones. On the left and right sides were 2 tall servers connected to a shorter console in the middle, and above was a huge display screen. Fang Zhou saw the source code running inside, controlled by the console. It was like a blue planet constantly rotating in the data world. Her heart beat faster. Found it. Fang Zhou couldn't help but step forward. She wanted to enter the data world and destroy the source code connecting the 2 worlds without any hesitation, but stopped when she saw the reading bar in the corner of the upper display. 90%. No! Her feverish head suddenly calmed down. This progress reading gave her a bad premonition. The blue rotating light ball separated a line and pointed behind it. Fang Zhou's sight finally turned to the game cabin behind the console and server. There were several medical monitoring devices around it. Connected to the game cabin, Fang Zhou narrowed his eyes, and his intuition told her that the Archon was lying inside. Her murderous intent gradually surged in her heart, and after finding the source code, she formed a cold calm. She bypassed the console, and hacked into the opening and closing settings of the game cabin. With a slight sound, its hatch was opened without cutting off the spirit to enter the inner world. Fang Zhou's breathing almost stopped, and the blood in her body was flowing backwards at this moment. She saw the real Archon. He was skinny and thin. His chest was thin. The frequency of his breathing was clearly visible through his single clothes. His body was full of tubes that didn't belong in the game cabin, and his pale skin was like a dying person. Fang Zhou stared at his face. It was a face exactly like Fang Xuanjiang's. Chapter 187. Inner World. After Fang Zhou successfully passed through the hacker's mental barrier and went to the outside world, the hacker also lost consciousness with her success. The 2 people's clasped hands loosened at the same time because of the departure of consciousness and sleep. Seeing this, Fang Xuanjiang stepped forward and carefully put Fang Zhou's hand into the hibernation cabin, closed the hatch for the 2, and adjusted their hibernation cabins to operating mode. After doing this, he moved the chair next to Fang Zhou's hibernation cabin, sat on it, and began to be in a trance. complying with Fang Zhou's guarding her requirement. Time passed by minute, and he waited for Fang Zhou to wake up. The flow rate of the inner world and the outer world is different, especially after the outer world shut down the server of Old Wasteland. There is no so-called plot output, and the flow rate difference between the two worlds has become greater. It only took the Ark 1 or 2 hours to reach the outside world, but the inner world had gradually moved forward for 7 days during this time. The shrinking of the safe zone became more and more serious. In a week, the overall area was reduced by 1/5. With the Ark's previous reminder, the humans in the shelters outside the wasteland verified the accuracy of the news and began to move towards the 004 shelter near the paradise. In just a few days, the outside of the paradise seemed to have entered a new doomsday, and a large-scale migration began, starting a race against time with the wasteland that was constantly catching up, as if the destruction of mankind was imminent. The 004 shelter, which originally stopped accepting new people, opened its doors to those who came from the outside of the wasteland at this time, and did not turn them away. But they also introduced a new policy. That is, only accepting people who move from small shelters on the edge of the wasteland, and those who were not far from the 004 shelter and far away from the outer perimeter of the safe zone would not be accepted. As for why the people in the small shelters outside the wasteland did not go to other shelters inside, now that the 001 shelter has been destroyed, the area and resources of 002 and 003 are not enough to accept so many people, and only the 004 shelter has the ability to accept them. At this time of human survival, the Order Bureau clearly knows what kind of riots will be caused if they do not accept outsiders. They are not like Paradise, which can completely block these outsiders. Accepting and maintaining order is the only thing they can do now. The original non-interference rule of the Order Bureau was completely overturned by the newly appointed director at this time. In a few days, they took drastic measures and began to move closer to the idealists that had existed in the Order Bureau 5 years ago. They recruited new orderers, controlled personnel in an orderly manner, and cleared out those alien creatures that would cause more chaos and threaten the safety of the people. They divided a new area between the White Whale District and the Black Lion District, named Blue Bird District, which means the Paradise of Hope, and arranged the people who came to the Blue Bird District for management. At present, the scope of the Desolate District is not that wide, and the number of people who came to the 004 shelter can barely be accepted. But the people moved, and the shrinking of the safe zone did not stop. The Order Bureau contacted the central government and asked them if they had any countermeasures. The answer they got was, of course, that they could not help. After all, it came too suddenly. The entire fourth dimension was the same topic every day, with a sense of doomsday carnival. Many people took advantage of the chaos to make trouble, and released all the behaviors they dared not to implement. Subject, at this time, if you want to do something, do it as soon as possible. Maybe the world will be completely destroyed tomorrow. They said that they are only moving around the periphery at present, and they have not yet confirmed that there is no countermeasure. I think it is better not to be too extreme and leave yourself a way out. Forget about the above. I don't think there's any chance of a turnaround. Don't work like a slave in the last minute. I agree. I'm going to spend all my points and redeem all the things I didn't want to redeem before. I envy you. I still don't have enough points to enjoy myself at this time. If you don't have any, just go and rob. At this time, can the Order Bureau control us? I think they are exhausted. Don't be afraid of retaliation. Everyone will die in the end. The originally chaotic Lily Street has become a hell. Burning, killing, looting, and fighting between transcendents are happening all the time. The evil of human nature is fully displayed at this time. Even the Order Bureau found it difficult to intervene. In this case, the chaos would spread to other places very quickly. At the critical moment, Yiji took action. The Order Bureau might not be able to suppress the chaos in Lioli Street, but Yiji could do it. Yiji's branch in Lioli Street had long been established there. With the development of Lechia and Li Baiji in Lioli Street earlier, the branches of the branch went deep into all directions, and the basic base was stronger than the Order Bureau had never thought of. Most of the players, who were temporarily taken into the Yiji branch by Fang Zhou, were also transcendents. In addition to the Order Bureau, the largest transcendent group in Shelter 004 was Yiji's branch. Since Fang Zhou released the news of reducing the safe zone, he more or less anticipated the current situation of Shelter 004. Before going to the outside world, Lechia and Li Baiji were not only told to guard her, but also to respond to the current situation. Li Baiji had already gone to Shelter 004 to arrange the follow-up and secretly cooperate with the Order Bureau. When recruiting personnel before, Fang Xuanjiang and Lei Chia led Yi Ji to show their faces in front of the Order Bureau, making them realize that there was such an organization in Liuli Street. But the Order Bureau had not had time to eradicate them before it ushered in a greater crisis. And Yi Ji's help was beyond the expectations of the Order Bureau. The chaos in Liuli Street was suppressed overnight. Jiang Ke, who has been busy recently, reported to the newly appointed director at a meeting in the Order Bureau. It is very likely that it was done by the organization set up here by Fang Zhou and his group, who he had fought before. The woman among the orderers was not tall, wearing the uniform of the Order Bureau director, with an ordinary appearance, short hair for easy movement, and a relaxed expression on her face. Listening to Jiang Ke's report, after the death of Meng Xian and Wei Siyuan, the director who was reconnected to the track was not directly promoted from an unknown S-level transcendent to manage an official force. It is not enough to have only strength. This person is called Bian Riyun. He originally worked in the Order Bureau, but left during the assignment 5 years ago. After the death of Meng Xian and Wei Siyuan, the Order Bureau was in chaos and no one could guard it. Jiang Ke remembered such a person and found him to reshuffle the Order Bureau. This is a good thing. As long as they can stabilize the current situation, we will cooperate with them, Bian Riyun said. But Jiang Ke wanted to say something else. The Order Bureau had suffered a great loss at the hands of Fang Zhou and her companions. Even though Jiang Ke knew that it was because they listened to the central government and reaped the fruits of their own labor and witnessed the death of important colleagues, it was difficult for him to have too much good feelings towards them and work with them to maintain order. Affected by your previous management system, Liuli Street itself was not governed by the Order Bureau. I don't care what conflicts you had with them before. It has nothing to do with the current Order Bureau. Bian Riyun interrupted his subsequent words and said in a steady voice, now that we can use each other to achieve the best results, why not do it? Do we have to go to war at this time because of past grievances? Jiang Ke, don't be too impulsive. Jiang Ke had nothing to say, and he did understand this truth. Under the instruction of Bian Riyun, the Order Bureau began to cooperate with Yi Ji tacitly, and in a short period of time, the chaos and damage of Shelter 004 were suppressed to the minimum. As for the fact that the safe zone was still approaching, they could only try their best to find the reason, hoping to leave a living space in the end. On the other side, in the paradise, Fang Zhou released the news to the outside world, and the central government's decision to conceal it failed. For the outside world, such an important source is unknown, but the central government is very clear about who has the ability to release such news. But they can't do anything about it. They can ignore those people outside the paradise, but the people in the paradise cannot be ignored. Wu Yuanbai took advantage of the wind to represent the people-friendly faction to appease everywhere, which pushed her own popularity up. But Wu Yuanbai also realized that the reduction of the safe zone this time was not so simple. But her ability clearly told her that it was not the end yet. Ark had not contacted her for several days, and Wu Yuanbai could vaguely feel that she might have gone to solve this crisis. And those players who were locked in the inner world, like the people in this world, fell into another kind of panic. They could still deceive themselves for a day or two, but after a week, there was still no change. The players completely realized that they were really locked in this world. But what's the use of confirming this point? They have no corresponding means to solve this problem. Su Yunshu has been in contact with Qidao Xiejuan more and more frequently these days. Strangely, after that day, they have never contacted Xu Yunzhou again. There are only two answers in front of them. Their previous inference is true. Xu Yunzhou is Fang Zhou, or she is dead. As a member who has also joined the Yeji headquarters, Su Yushu does not think that Xu Yunzhou will die so easily. It can only be Fang Zhou. Players who have entered the game do not know the perspective of Fang Zhou on the outside world. Su Yunshu and others can only guess. Before Fang Zhou went to the outside world, he ordered the people of the Lechia faction to monitor her. She could not control other players. But Su Yunshu, who was brought in by her, must be kept under her eyes. Those surveillance in the dark were difficult for the inexperienced Su Yunshu to detect. In the chaos of many parties, time moved forward another day and came to the 8th day. This week was not a peaceful one for Yi Ji. When Fang Zhou was there, she could do the work of a group of people with her alien creatures. Now that she is not here, Rachel and the doctor have become the backbone. But Rachel needs to stay at the headquarters with Tucker. and the originally calculated matter of moving the weapons of the central arsenal has been temporarily shelved. She slept for a long time, Rachel said to Tucker on the side. After all, what she has to do is very difficult, and not easy to do. Tucker raised his tentacles, and spoke seriously. When he first saw Tucker, and heard the voice of Wang Chao when he spoke, Lechia was also startled. After some understanding, he also knew what kind of existence Tucker was. Lechia did not like alien creatures. He had never communicated with the one in his body. Communication would only make him assimilate with it faster. He himself was an S-level transcendent, and generally, he did not need its power. However, with Wang Chao in front, he did not dislike Tucker, who had Wang Chao's memory. He could talk to it for a few days, which was quite fresh. I know. Lechia sighed. The longer the Ark slept, the more unknown and dangerous it was. Lechia did not want to think about the worst result. What he could do for the organization at present was to follow the Ark's previous orders and guard the night. Just then, the door of the compartment suddenly opened. Fang Xuanjiang, who had been living in it for the past few days, stumbled out. He pressed his head. His eyes were bloodshot. His originally fair complexion became even paler, and he was sweating profusely, as if he had just been pulled out of the water. Hey, what's wrong with you? Raki saw that he was in a bad state, and wanted to help Fang Xuanjiang, but he was slapped away by him. He gritted his teeth, as if he was trying his best to suppress something, and said to Raki and Tucker word by word, "Watch my sister. Don't let anyone in." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly moved outside, and disappeared as if he was escaping. Lechia frowned. Fang Xuanjiang had basically not left here in the past few days. According to Lechia's understanding of this sister complex, he would never trust them to take care of the current Ark. This was too abnormal. It was impossible for Lechia not to notice something wrong. But it was not convenient for him to catch up now. He simply contacted number 1 and Feishing, and asked them to follow Fang Xuanjiang, who had already left, and observe his next movements. It seemed that countless vertigo circles were rushing in the air around him. Fang Xuanjiang felt like he was walking on the clouds. His head was torn apart from the middle, and every inch of his body was being broken and reassembled. Just leaving the Yeji headquarters consumed most of his strength. Although he was already far away from the Ark, he still didn't dare to slack off, and endured the pain to go further away. I want to be farther away from my sister. Farther away. He was in so much pain that this was the only thought left in his dazed mind. There was a force oppressing him. Fang Xuanjiang knew that this was not a simple mental occupation, nor was it suppressing his consciousness and occupying the magpie's nest. He could feel that he was being eliminated and reorganized. This was completely different from ordinary replacement and occupation. Fang Xuanjiang was being erased, just like a program was deleted and a new code was entered to form a new him. The successful reorganization was out of his control, and out of his control. The memories in his head were in disarray. His body moved aimlessly, and he began to recall more memories, remembering the previous restarts, when Fang Zhou died and his body was controlled by unknown forces again and again, heading towards an ending he didn't want. He also remembered himself earlier, which was the initial restart of memories that Fang Zhou didn't even have. At this time, Fang Xuanjiang suddenly remembered. When he was created, he was just an empty shell. But soon, these memories gradually disappeared after they came out, and they were deleted one by one, getting closer and closer to the existing memories, and then filled with some memories he had never experienced. He felt like a hollow puppet, with his inner body that he had filled with great difficulty being dug out and stuffed with things that did not belong to him. This feeling was no less than watching himself being dismembered, which made him tremble and shudder. Fang Xuanjiang knew who did it, and whose memories that he did not want to accept were coming in. Fang Xuanjiang did hide something from Fang Zhou, as early as when he was captured in the tower and saw the Archon, who tried to control his mind and invade his body. He realized that something was wrong, being controlled by the mind. Fang Xuanjiang saw Jiang Chudu at the dividing line between the two worlds. The person who used his ability on him and wanted to replace him had a face exactly like his. Although the Archon did not succeed in replacing him at that time, Fang Xuanjiang felt that this body seemed to be created for him. At this moment, this feeling was confirmed in the most distant memory. He was originally just an empty shell without thoughts and self. An empty shell waiting for its rightful owner to come. Sister. 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 Fang Xuanjiang felt helpless and bewildered. He began to call Fang Zhou in his heart, calling her over and over again, as if only in this way could he prove his existence. In the end, it turned into a request for help over and over again. Sister, save me. Sister, save me. Such a cry for help was still useless. Fang Xuanjiang's memory was almost completely gone. A larger consciousness finally invaded his brain and weakened his consciousness. Everything seemed to be hopeless. Fang Xuanjiang knew what the Archon, who occupied this body, would do after he was completely replaced. So before his last consciousness dissipated, he stopped, put his hand on his heart, activated the power in his body, and attacked his beating heart. A fishy and sweet taste came from his throat. The power that was slowly and steadily erasing him seemed to be crazy at this time. It did not continue to erase the weak consciousness and memory that he had left, but directly invaded his body and stopped the power that was about to crush his heart. When he raised his eyes again, he was already a different person. Damn it! Feeling the intense pain in his chest and his still beating heart, Jiang Chudu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and couldn't help cursing. In order not to hand over his body to him, Fang Xuanjiang even committed suicide. A consciousness that shouldn't have been born also left at such an inopportune time, which took him a lot of effort. After a buffer, Jiang Chudu loosened his palm and made a clenching and relaxing movement to adapt to this body. It was healthy, strong, full of majestic power, and his 5 senses were so sharp that any movement around him could not escape his senses. After a while, Jiang Chudu looked back and said coldly, "Come out. Why are you following me?" Under normal circumstances, someone following Fang Xuanjiang would definitely be discovered. But he was in that state just now. It was impossible for him to stay awake, let alone discover the little tail following behind him. Fang Xuanjiang couldn't find it, but it didn't mean that Jiang Chudu couldn't find it now. After hesitating for a while, the 2 figures came out from behind the building that was blocking the way. Lurking behind were number 1 and Feixing, said by Lei Chia, who were 2 familiar faces to Jiang Chudu. Feixing said, "You don't look normal. Although I don't like you. The world will be unhappy if something happens to you." Fang Xuanjiang stumbled away, looking painful. Even Feixing could see that something was wrong. "It's okay now. Let's go back first." Jiang Chudu turned around and replied to him in the same tone as Fang Xuanjiang. Facing Jiang Chudu's eyes, Feixing couldn't help but shudder. A sense of familiarity that he couldn't explain came over him. He couldn't tell why for a moment, and thought it was his own illusion. He looked at him suspiciously. "Are you sure?" Jiang Chudu didn't answer Feixing's question again, but returned quickly along the original route. He had seen Fang Xuanjiang's memory, and knew that Fang Zhou had gone to the outside world 8 days ago. He knew her. She went to the outside world for only one purpose: to kill him and cut off the connection between the 2 worlds. Because of Fang Xuanjiang's actions just now, Jiang Chudu has not completely cleared his existence, and the data is not loaded completely. He is not afraid that Fang Zhou will kill his outer body. But if the data is not loaded successfully, he will lose control of this world. So he can't let Fang Zhou kill his outer body. Facing Feixing's question, he said nothing. Fang Xuanjiang usually doesn't like to pay attention to people except Fang Zhou. Feixing didn't notice anything wrong, so he had to take number 1 and Jiang Chudu back to Yeji headquarters. On the way, he kept chirping, saying, "Hey, are you really okay? What happened just now? If there is a problem, don't hold on. You are the only relative in the world." What was left for him was Jiang Chudu's cold back. He was too fast, and Feixing and number 1 couldn't keep up with him. Feixing was so angry that she muttered a few words and told the situation to Lei Chia on the other side through the communication equipment. Fang Xuanjiang left not far away in that state just now. Jiang Chudu quickly returned to the Yeji headquarters. He did not hesitate at all and returned to the entrance of the laboratory in a hurry. Lei Chia and Tucker were guarding outside, seeing him return as if nothing had happened. Lei Chia couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Is it all right now?" he said, moving a step to the side and blocking Jiang Chudu, without any intention of letting him in. Jiang Chudu narrowed his eyes. "Let me in." Rachel shrugged. "You just said, don't let anyone in. Aren't you also among anyone? If you just want to protect our boss, you can do it by staying outside with me." His words attracted Jiang Chudu's attention. He looked at Rachel with cold eyes. He didn't look like he was looking at a living person, but at a corpse, an inanimate object. Tucker's tentacles were already approaching him, and when they touched him, Jiang Chuda quickly dodged away. It was this dodging that meant to start a war, which made Rachel sure that he was no longer Fang Xuanjiang. If everyone else could be replaced, then Fang Xuanjiang could also be replaced. Raichia decisively teleported behind Jiang Chudu, pointed the loaded gun at his head, and fired bullets at close range, while Tucker also waved his tentacles to quickly approach him. However, the bullet was crushed into thin slices before it touched Jiang Chudu. And then, there was the mental control of another spirit, and the tentacles that were about to touch him stopped at a close distance. Raichia and Tucker stiffened their bodies, and could not move at this moment. It was not easy to control an S-level transcendent and a double S alien creature, especially since Jiang Chuda's mental state was not good at the moment. It would take time to kill Raichia and Tucker, who grew very fast. He was racing with Fang Zhou, not wasting a single second, and was the first to pass the identification system at the door and enter the laboratory. After entering, Jiang Chuda had a clear goal. He strode to the 2 hibernation capsules, and confirmed through the visual glass of the hibernation capsules that it was Fang Zhou lying inside. She closed her eyes, and her face was calm. She looked like she was sleeping without any threat. Jiang Chuda looked at her for a few seconds inexplicably, and his face was ugly after he reacted. Fang Xuanjiang's consciousness had not completely dissipated, and it still affected him at this time. He no longer hesitated to turn the power in his body, ready to crush the hibernation capsule and the people inside. Just when Jiang Chudu was about to release his ability, his movements suddenly froze. Outside world. Sanatorium. The current time is 12:47 on June 28th. The whole space was extremely quiet. Fang Zhou looked at the faces of the people in the cabin. All the clues about the Archon and Fang Xuanjiang in her mind came out, and she pieced together an answer. Her first reaction was, damn. She destroyed the Archon's original carrier in the inner world, the optical brain that carried his spiritual body and the controlled mechanical body, and he could not enter other people's bodies. Then whose body would he enter when he entered the game again? This face that was exactly the same as Fang Xuanjiang told Fang Zhou the answer. She immediately realized that Fang Xuanjiang might be replaced by the Archon, and she and the hacker in the inner world were already in danger. Now she is still controlling the hacker's body well, which means that the Archon has not yet achieved his goal. The most urgent task is to stop the Archon's invasion, kill him as quickly as possible, and cut off his spiritual body that connects the 2 worlds. Fang Zhou drew out the dagger he carried, pointed the sharp blade at the Archon's throat, and stabbed it hard. But just as he was about to pierce his neck, Fang Zhou's movement suddenly stopped, and the sharp blade stayed on his skin, sinking into a groove and bleeding. No, that's not right. She remembered the progress bar that had reached 90% on the control panel just now. Killing the Archon's body might not kick him out of the inner world. Fang Zhou calmed down. She put down the dagger and pressed her hand on the helmet connected to his brain. She invaded it in the closest state and exerted her strength to the maximum. The Archon had a powerful S-level spiritual body in the inner world, but he was extremely weak when connected to the game cabin. Fang Zhou closed her eyes and controlled her spiritual power to invade the Archon's brain in the same way as when he checked his memory. She turned out his past. She clearly understood that only by looking at his memory could she make the most correct response. Hold on a little longer. Hold on a little longer. She whispered to Fang Xuanjiang in another world in her heart. And then she was covered by the gushing memory. Jiang Chudu was sentenced to death since the day he was born. He has a rare congenital disease. Even with the advanced medical technology today, there is no way to cure him. He cannot see the sun because ultraviolet rays will burn his skin. He cannot run because his heart cannot bear the load. He cannot be injured because the wound will bleed uncontrollably. He is like a porcelain doll that breaks at the touch, like an epiphyllum that withers as soon as it blooms, and he decays rapidly in the long river of time. Fortunately, he has a very useful brain. Using secular standards, it is not an exaggeration to say that he is a genius. Jiang Chudu is unwilling to accept his own decaying body and his lifespan, which can be seen at a glance. He wants to live, and live by any means. The launch of the first holographic game cabin 10 years ago brought him endless inspiration. If we separate the human spirit from the body and then put the spirit into the data world, can we continue life? This is somewhat different from the data life that some relevant researchers are currently studying. Jiang Chudu believes that the continuation of the spirit is the real continuation of life, and what he needs is a more alternative digital life. On this basis, in addition to studying the convertible game cabin, He must create a world that is real enough to carry his spirit. He invested all his time in it, evolving a world through the main code using the existing intelligent means. Jiang should have spent a lot of time here. But he still couldn't create a world that was real enough. Even if he built a game cabin, he couldn't achieve the highest state of integration. The smell was fake. The touch was fake. Everything was fake. Until one day, he wrote a set of source code. And in the process of evolution, he was connected to a huge data world that he had never seen before. It was a world that already existed in the data universe. Or it would be more accurate to describe it as a low-dimensional world. Through this set of source code, Jiang should have connected with it. The invasion of the high-dimensional world brought a catastrophe to this data world, which was later called Falling Sun by them. The day of the fall suddenly came under such unprovoked circumstances. Seeing this world enter a rapid decline, Jiang Chudu was extremely panicked. Fortunately, the source code he connected gave him the right to modify this world. He quickly built an isolated paradise in the game, providing a safe shelter for the data inside. Fortunately, such a decline did not completely engulf this world. It left a safe land. After ensuring that everything was stable, Jiang should have found that he could use the source code to restart this world. But the furthest time he could restart was always the day when the fall day came. Although it was somewhat different from the beautiful world that Jiang Chudu wanted, he had no more choices. After successfully connecting the game cabin to this world, Jiang Chudu felt an absolutely perfect sense of integration. He succeeded, and being able to restart this world constantly means that he can obtain eternal life in this world. Just putting his spirit into the game cannot satisfy Jiang Chudu. In his eyes, the people in the inner world are just evolving data, without any warmth. There is no hope of resurrection in the world with only data, and it can only be awakened by pulling people in reality. And the death in the data world is not real death. Those who are pulled in by him can live forever as another life. He believes that this is the real value of life. So he plans to mass-produce game cabins and prepare to use games too. The name attracted countless players. No matter where you are, there will always be people who risk everything for life. People who risk everything are equally attractive in the eyes of those bigwigs. Jiang Chudu selected suitable businessmen and officials who were eager to cooperate with him. They would not care what he did in the process, as long as there was a desired result. These people formed a huge power network behind Jiang Chudu to protect him. It was also in this process that he met Shihan, who was enthusiastic about this research and became his important partner in the future. With a good backing, Jiang Chudu began to modify this data world drastically. The game needs a plot and dramatic conflict. The game cabin that was initially developed could not naturally cut off the connection between the spirit and the body as it did later. He extracted his own data and used part of his data to create a carrier Fang Xuanjiang in the inner world that could carry his spirit. But he also knew that this would not allow the game cabin to be released. Data extraction is a very cumbersome task, and it is difficult to carry a large number of players. Moreover, his goal has always been to replace those data lives with people in reality. He must develop an effect that allows players to land directly on the natives. At the beginning of this research, Jiang Chudu invested in a group of testers. The new game cabin allowed him to control it perfectly. He could cut off the connection between their spirit and body. As long as the body died, they could stay in that world forever. Facts have proved that he was not wrong. These testers are the best examples. They have integrated into another world and become immortal life forms. The testers were sacrificed to tell Jiang Chudu that this is feasible. After a period of research, the functions of the game cabin have become more complete. However, Jiang Chudu, who had extracted some data to create his body, could no longer use this method to enter the game. But he was unwilling to replace those data. The carrier he created, Fang Xuanjiang, naturally made him act as the protagonist of this story. This body is healthy and strong, which is the body he dreamed of. But his inside is empty. Jiang Chudu did not set any personality color for him. He is a puppet controlled by him. On this basis, for some unknown reason, he modified the original data of one of the aborigines, changing her into an old human who had long been extinct, and making her a relative of Fang Xuanjiang. This person was Fang Zhou later. In Jiang Chudu's view, that was a person as weak as he was in reality. She could not irradiate the sunlight, could not run, could not be injured, and her end must be death. She lived in hell more than him, and could not control her own life. Jiang Chudu felt that he had created a fellow who could empathize with him. Then, he let the data character he created give alms to her and save her. He enjoyed the feeling of being a savior. The story has taken shape. Even if left alone, the free evolution can lead to a sufficiently dramatic story. And he is constantly restarting the world, wanting to evolve the most perfect result, without his spirit entering this carrier Feng Xuanjiang. It is just a gray empty shell. Jiang Chudu will enter Feng Xuanjiang through the game cabin after the restart evolution process progresses to Feng Ark's death, and experience a healthy adventurous life. In the later internal test, the reason why players thought that Feng Xuanjiang's temperament changed drastically after Feng Ark's death and became terrifyingly cruel and cold-blooded was only because they saw Jiang Chudu. Gradually, the direction of this world gradually became out of his control. His role was no longer completely ruled by him, and he began to have self-awareness, born from the only salvation arc he set for him. He absorbed the emotions he got from the arc and filled this empty shell. From then on, Jiang Chudu could no longer enter Feng Xuanjiang's body through conventional means. He had to enter the game completely and transmit his own mental data to erase Feng Xuanjiang's existence. But in this way, he would stay in that world forever. Jiang Chudu's body in the outside world had not reached its limit, and he was not prepared to lose control so early. This development was obviously not to his liking and exceeded his expectations. He felt angry at first, and then began to look for the reason. In the process, he found that some characters were awakening. They left the NPC identity he gave them and began to try to awaken the people around them. After some searching, Jiang Chudu found the source Arkansas. She seemed to be watching him from another world. Although Jiang Chudu could modify the code, he could not delete it. He could only restart the world to the beginning of the story. But not long after the restart, she woke up again. And every new start after this restart, she survived longer and longer, from dying not long after the initial appearance to living longer and longer later, exceeding the death deadline he set for her. This made Jiang Chudu feel that things were out of control. He realized the danger, and he had to kill Feng Zhou. However, after he had this idea, everything went off track. He could no longer restart the world through the source code, and could no longer modify any program. The arc that kept repeating and awakening became the most stubborn virus, making the underlying code a mess and resisting the invasion from the outside. Jiang Chudu had to enter the inner world in another way and kill the arc virus there. Feng Zhou suddenly pulled away from these memories. She felt sick and angry. The flames that had burned once again rose up. She originally had a healthy body and should not accept endless death. Her fate should be in her hands. Jiang Chudu turned this world into a game in order to turn people into digital life and control them in the world he created. He felt that he was the savior. Human beings' soft and fragile bodies restricted the development of life, and he could bring them eternal life. But he was actually self-contradictory. The original characters in this world were like the Arkansas. Whether they were awakened or not, they were all life. He evolved the real human beings into countless data and programs that were neither alive nor dead. Then, weren't the natives who were originally made up of data also living people? Jiang Chudu wanted to pull all the real human beings in, let them kill the natives, and turn them into immortal data. In his subconscious, he always envied the real living people. The falling sun brought by the invasion of the higher dimension destroyed their homes, and he set the world as a game. The game setting is unknown to the indigenous people. In their known lives, they will be happy because of the rare good weather, cry with joy because a sprout grows on the wasteland, and be sad because of the departure of their comrades. They are not people. What are they? How can he define what is alive, and what is the value of life? Why do those players leave their families and friends and become immortal puppets? After reading Jiang Chudu's memory, Feng Zhou understood many things and knew those puzzles that she couldn't figure out. When Old Wasteland was first released, the original name of this work was Elysian Paradise, which was the place of happiness after death in ancient Greek mythology. The players who accepted his arrangement would enter the place of eternal happiness, while the natives whose fate was determined by him could only wander in the river of pain and could not find a home. Feng Zhou is now trying to break this illusion and pull everyone wandering in the river of pain back to the real land. The progress bar that has walked 90% means that Feng Xuanjiang has not been completely replaced by him, and he has not completely loaded his spiritual data into another world. Otherwise she would not be able to obtain his memory here. Feng Zhou finally knew how to pull Jiang Chudu's spirit out. She dropped the dagger in her hand and completely invaded Jiang Chudu's brain connected to the game cabin. A dizzy feeling suddenly hit her. She pulled Jiang Chudu, who had already crossed the river of data, back through the gap left by Fang Xuanjiang, and her hands tightly pinched Jiang Chuda's neck. His slender neck could be broken at any time in her hands. Huh? Jiang Chuda suddenly pulled out of the inner world. He opened his eyes, breathing rapidly. His thin hands tightly grasped the edge of the cabin, and stared at Fang Zhou with wide eyes. There was a strange face in front of him, but he knew clearly that the person who wanted to kill him was Fang Zhou. Chapter 188. In this game between the two of them, Fang Zhou was slightly better. Jiang Chudu, who was about to kill her, was a step slower, and all his efforts were wasted. Jiang Chudu's eyes changed slightly, and he struggled in the game cabin. He wanted to raise his hands to resist, but his weak body had no resistance when someone grabbed his neck. He only felt a limp and hypoxic feeling like a tide. The small cut on his neck that was previously cut by the knife tip was constantly bleeding, rubbing against Fang Zhou's fingers that were pinching him, and dripping down. Sister, don't. Jiang Chuda looked at Fang Zhou. His expression changed, and he uttered a few syllables from his throat to call her with difficulty. The face in front of her was deceptive enough to pretend to be Fang Xuanjiang's expression. Fang Zhou looked dazed for a moment, and the strength in her hands was a little loose. But the next second, she tightened her hands even more. Fang Xuanjiang could recognize Fang Zhou at a glance, and Fang Zhou could certainly recognize Fang Xuanjiang at a glance. In the end, Jiang Chudu, who had used all means to survive, was trying to beg her to let him go with such means. Fang Zhou laughed in anger, and she said in a mocking tone, "You are not him. You are just a cowardly and arrogant poor guy. You." Jiang Chudu's only hope was extinguished. He did not have the courage to accept death. Living in bed for a long time made him envy ordinary people who were truly full of vitality. He envied and hated them. Controlling their lives gave him pleasure. But deep down, he was always the Jiang Chudu who was afraid of real death. Fang Zhou had a dagger on her body. She could have stabbed him a few times and killed him quickly and neatly to prevent the changes that would occur in the following time. But she didn't do it. She looked at him and felt that he was so weak that he couldn't resist even his body with degraded hacker power. He was slaughtered by her in her hands and couldn't resist at all. Fang Zhou slowly tightened her hand, taking away Jiang Chudu's breath, making him clearly feel the pain of his life loss. Feeling the taste of death in this body was an extremely long torture for Jiang Chudu. And what really made him feel painful was that he failed to completely occupy and cleanse Fang Xuanjiang's existence, and was pulled out of the inner world by her. If he died now, it would be a real death, and all his efforts for so long would come to nothing. He would die and no longer be able to obtain the eternal life he wanted. The desire to survive gave Jiang Chudu some strength to resist. He made a ho-ho sound and struggled with all his strength. He raised his slender hands to pry open Fang Zhou's fingers, but he couldn't even leave a scratch on her skin. Jiang Chudu knew that he and Fang Zhou could not coexist. He had many opportunities to kill her, but these opportunities were resisted by her tenacious vitality. At this time, he deeply realized that Fang Zhou had never been his kind. She was never afraid of death. The strong desire to survive was essentially unwilling to let her life be controlled. She had her own bottom line and a vigorous vitality. Fang Zhou was the sword that stabbed him in the concrete form of the world he destroyed. Jiang Chudu struggled for a long time. His pale face was suffocated and purple. Fang Zhou's sight burned his spirit. He could no longer make a sound. He could only look at Fang Zhou's black eyes with a bit of desperate pleading, making him look so pitiful. Fang Zhou would never let him go. Looking at him like this, Fang Zhou felt extremely happy. She only hated that she didn't torture him long enough. Jiang Chudu's consciousness gradually blurred. He knew that death was really coming. His fingers trembled in spasm, but his eyes looked towards the control console in the middle. That was the paradise he created. He almost succeeded. Jiang Chudu's breathing stopped. His heart stopped beating. His vital signs disappeared, and the instrument connected to him sounded an alarm. He wanted to transmit his body data to the outside, but was intercepted by Fang Zhou in the first time. After a while, Fang Zhou confirmed that he was dead as far as possible. She stood up and loosened her hands that were pinching his neck. They were stained with blood from his wound. She shook her hands in disgust and went to the bathroom to wash them clean. She didn't look back at Jiang Chudu, who stopped breathing. After killing Jiang Chudu and cleaning up the traces of her left at the scene, there was only one last thing left. Delete the source code to cut off the invasion of the outside world into the internal world. Fang Zhou walked to the control console, closed her eyes, entered the data world, and quietly looked at the rotating blue light ball in the data world. She felt unprecedentedly calm. She read Jiang Chudu's memory in detail and became familiar with it through the internal control system. Fang Zhou confirmed that the players have not yet officially merged into the internal world, but the system's control over those game cabins is a one-way ticket, and they can only be liberated by destroying the source code. As long as the body in the outside world is still alive, the player with the mental helmet connected to the game cabin will return to his homeland safely. The hacker whose mental barrier she broke through has essentially come to the outside world with her. Her consciousness is buried in the junction between this body and the data world, and will wake up again after the source code is destroyed and Fang Zhou's consciousness disappears. More importantly, the damage caused by the falling sun to the inner world will be restored after the connection is cut off, and the inner world will truly begin to recover. No matter how you look at it, this is a perfect ending. Except for her. Fang Arc is now facing a problem. As the person who destroyed the source code, she must destroy it all before she can leave. And she is a person in the inner world. When the connection between the two worlds is cut off, she will lose the channel back to the inner world. There is a high probability that her spirit will fall into the data universe and cannot find the way home. This is the first time so far that she has encountered such a high failure rate for her. Fang Zhou is not a righteous and kind character. She has always considered herself to be a very hypocritical egoist. All the way to now. Her purpose is nothing more than to get rid of the control of others and live as herself and Fang Zhou. She has always been self-centered and will not put herself in danger for others. Saving the world is not in line with her. She can completely ignore everyone and occupy the hacker's body to continue living in this world. Or take the source code for herself. Become the next Jiang Chudu. Control the inner world. And gain eternal life. With Fang Zhou's ability, she can do better than Jiang Chudu, leaving no traces or handles. But she would not do this. To do so would overturn everything she had done before, and would make her betray her own personality. Not being able to continue living does not mean that everything she has done is a failure. She has already gotten rid of her predetermined fate, and walked out of her own path. No matter what awaits her in the future, she is already the final winner. Fang Zhou opened her eyes. She locked all the doors outside again, then hacked into the server of the control panel, and approached the rotating planet. After connecting the two worlds for a long time, the volume of the source code has become very large. It is not so easy for her to destroy it now. It needs to be continuously disassembled and completely eliminated. This process was tedious and lengthy, and she could not pay attention to danger. Fang Zhou had never felt her brain working so fast before, and she felt tired in a very short time. She could vaguely hear someone walking outside, stopping at the door, and finally leaving. Until 10 minutes later, the blue data ball became weaker and smaller, and only the last step was left. Fang Zhou paused for a while, and then completely deleted the source code that was almost completely erased. In an instant, she felt an unparalleled shock, and the blue halo exploded at the location where the source code disappeared, and the river of data leading to the inner world also disappeared in front of her. At this moment, Fang Zhou knew that the connection between the two worlds was slowly dissipating. She felt dizzy, as if her remaining spirit in this world was also affected by the explosion. She realized that the hacker was about to wake up, and the active spirit that did not belong to this world would also be squeezed out. Fang Zhou quickly left the room, the building, and the nursing home. She used her last consciousness to delete the surveillance records that captured the hacker's figure, returned to the car she came from, opened the door but didn't have time to close it, and fell into the driver's seat, closed her eyes, and leaned her head on the steering wheel. This trip consumed too much of Fang Zhou's energy. The connection between the worlds had been cut off, and she had no idea where her consciousness that was excluded from this world would drift to. The spirit was exhausted. The temperature in July was already very high. The car had been parked outside for a while, and the stuffy smell inside was even more suffocating. But the breeze outside the car blew through the open door with a cool breeze, and the air was filled with the smell of growing plants. Fang Zhou felt relaxed for the first time in a long time. Not long after, the original owner of this body woke up. Inner world. Jiang Chudu's action stopped at the last second, and the power he had gathered dissipated in the air, and his spirit was pulled back to the outside world by Fang Zhou. Without the external consciousness controlling this body, it fell down like an empty shell puppet. Fang Xuanjiang's consciousness was mostly wiped out by Jiang Chudu, so that even if Jiang Chudu left this body, he could not wake up immediately and fell into a coma. It was also at this time that the mental control imposed on Rachel and Tucker disappeared due to Jiang Chudu's departure. The next second, Rachel used his ability to teleport in. His face, which was usually teasing and casual, was full of panic and fear. He was afraid of the unknown that would happen during the short time he was controlled. The other party's goal was very clear. With Fang Xuanjiang's ability, it would only take a moment to destroy anything. After entering the laboratory, he subconsciously pointed his gun at Fang Xuanjiang, who was lying on the ground, ready to send him a bunch of bullets. He withdrew his aggression after discovering that he had lost consciousness. Rachel's heart almost jumped out of his chest, and his brown eyes looked in the direction of Fang Zhou. He did not check what happened to Fang Xuanjiang. He quickly walked to the side of the hibernation capsule to check her condition. Seeing that she was not in any accident, he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Tucker followed closely behind Rachel and moved in just as fast. He wrapped Fang Xuanjiang with his tentacles and confirmed the contact status to invalidate his ability to prevent other changes. Fang Zhou's spirit body had gone to another world, and the connection between her and Tucker became extremely weak. But Tucker could still vaguely feel her and knew that she must be fine. Tucker held Fang Xuanjiang and turned him left and right. Seeing that he had no intention of waking up, he asked Rachel what happened to him. After being too nervous, Rachel suddenly relaxed. He felt his hands were a little weak. He put his hands on his neck unnaturally, and finally turned his eyes to them and replied. He should have been replaced by the Archon. He didn't know what the Archon was, but the mental control that could control him and Tucker was very clear. Fang Zhou went to the outside world this time for one purpose, which was to kill him. Lei Chia felt very scared. He was almost there. He couldn't help but TSK and reflect on why he hadn't stopped Fang Xuanjiang successfully when he noticed that something was wrong. Tucker looked at him with his black beam-like eyes. He noticed Lei Chia's thoughts, raised his tentacles and patted his shoulders, and comforted him in a gentle voice. Don't blame yourself too much. From the result, my master was not injured. I know, but I still have to reflect on myself, Lei Chia said. With this little episode, combined with Fang Xuanjiang's current state, he could probably guess that the Archon failed to kill Fang Zhou, mostly because Fang Zhou found him outside. Lei Chia scratched his hair and looked at the unconscious Fang Xuanjiang again. Just in case, Lei Chia asked Xiang to take him away and seal his abilities with the suppressor, and then handed him over to the doctor to check his condition. After a check, the doctor felt a little confused, and she summed up the reason. The activity of his brain waves is very low, far lower than the active state of sleeping and coma. If it is more serious, he may enter a state of brain death. What happened? Xiang took a breath and asked, is there any way to remedy this? This kind of healing power involving consciousness and mental damage cannot be dealt with, and the doctor has no means. The most he can do is to keep monitoring. Put him in the hibernation chamber first. He can't wake up in a short time. Knowing that Fang Xuanjiang will not die for a while, Lei Chia interrupted with some sarcasm. Play the boss's recording next to him on a loop. Maybe it can stimulate his brain activity. Xiang. The doctor nodded. This method is not impossible, given how much he cares about Fang Arc. Her voice can easily activate him. Right, Curie. I was just joking. But in the end they didn't do that. Mainly because Fang Zhou really didn't leave any images or sounds. She has always been cautious and careful, and most of the time, she doesn't act with her own face and original voice. Not to mention that since she subdued the wall rat, all the videos that captured her figure were deleted by her. Fortunately, in less than an hour, Fang Xuanjiang's brain activity has recovered, and he seems to be slowly repairing himself. In this way, waking up is only a matter of time. After this happened, time moved back half a day. It has been 8.5 days since Fang Zhou went to the outside world, and it is about to enter the morning of the 9th day. The changes in this world happened this morning. The safe zone, which was shrinking at a uniform speed, stopped moving forward, due to the major natural disasters that caused the safe zone to shrink in the past few days. The central government has more or less spent some resources outside the paradise under pressure. The slightly larger shelters have reconnaissance aircraft produced by the paradise, and they test them near the desolate area every day to respond in advance. So when the shrinking stopped, most of the shelters detected this information. The central government observed it for a short period of time and found that it not only did not shrink further, but was expanding at a very slow speed. However, there is no exact data for this news, and they have not announced it to the public. Only the safe zone will stop shrinking information was announced. After 9 days of death, the shadow of death that shrouds this world has almost reached its limit. If it stays a few days later, it may trigger a large-scale frenzy, especially in the 004 shelter that has received a large number of outsiders. This news is more important to the Order Bureau than anything else. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and even the discussion atmosphere in the fourth dimension swept away the past haze. Of course, there are definitely some people who hold pessimistic views and pour cold water on everyone. Theme: life is full of ups and downs. And this shitty world is the same. It is as tenacious as us. This is just the beginning. How can we confirm whether this is a temporary or permanent stop? After all, we didn't expect such a thing to happen 9 days ago. The falling day came unclearly, and the 9 days of disaster also stopped unclearly. Alas, I always feel that the world may be destroyed every day. Friends, be optimistic. This is still a good start. Just like the questioner said, this shitty world is as tenacious as human life. The above is a bit sad. Human life is not that tenacious. It's only the human spirit that is tenacious. The topic has gone a bit heavy. Life is hard. But I haven't lived enough. Oh no. I thought I was doomed this time. I've almost used up all my points. It's better to be destroyed. Who will save me? We've only just reached the wasteland. And you dare to spend points recklessly? I was going to wait until I'm halfway through before spending. Tighten your belt. Live well and make money well. You can make money again if you lose it. So peaceful. Am I dead? I feel the peace of being dead. Upstairs. This should be the feeling of enlightenment after escaping death. Anyway, let's toast to tomorrow. At about the same time, the players who were locked in the inner world began to leave the inner world on a large scale, returning to the outer world in batches. After the players' spirits left, the natives whose bodies were occupied also woke up one by one. This catastrophe stopped, making people feel that these 9 days were like a trance dream. Just when the last one left the inner world. At night, I went to the laboratory of the headquarters. Beep. The hacker's hibernation capsule sounded an alarm, and the body carrying the hacker's spirit inside lost its vital signs after losing the last spiritual connection with the hacker. The hacker stayed in this body for too long, even if it was not her intention. The consciousness of the native inhabitant in this body had long dissipated, and she inevitably died after she left. Reaching the alarm warning, Rachel hurried to check, and the death of the hacker's body made him feel a little panic. This means that the hacker has left this world and returned to her original body. Combined with the things that happened not long ago, Lei Chia quickly deduced that Feng Zhou had achieved her goal. According to the current progress, she should wake up. He glanced at Feng Zhou, who was lying quietly in the hibernation capsule next to him. After a while, he disposed of the hacker's body and continued to wait for Feng Zhou to wake up with Tucker. But time kept moving forward for an hour, 2 hours, half a day, a week, 2 weeks. The safe zone has been confirmed to not shrink anymore. The central government has announced that the safe zone is even expanding outward. Wu Yuanbai has been promoted to the tower. Inside, the Order Bureau and the Night Branch have reached a delicate balance in the 004 shelter. Someone has found sprouts growing outside the paradise. The aggressiveness of the alien creatures has gradually decreased. The central government has begun to contact the shelter outside the paradise. Feng Zhou has not woken up. Chapter 189. Ever since plants were found sprouting outside the paradise, the day when the safe zone stopped advancing was called Resurgence Day by the public, and was used as the beginning of the world's awakening in comparison with Fall Day. Now, 40 days have passed since Resurgence Day, and the Ark has no sign of awakening, no matter how long it has been. Lei Chia, Shi Xiang, Fei Xing, Li Baiji and others will take turns to guard the laboratory where the Ark is located. The alien creatures that she merged into her body did not show the worst abnormality that the Ark had expected. Tucker, who was separated by her, relied on Wang Chao's memory and a personality that was highly similar to Wang Chao. During this period, he got along very well with others. As an alien creature of the Ark, it did not move from the place where the Ark was. It was just that the most important backbone and leader had been lost. During this period, the internal operation of Yeji was maintained by Lei Chia and his people at most. No more unnecessary things were done, except for some things that Fang Zhou had ordered in advance. They would hardly appear in public to prevent other forces from being involved because of excessive intervention in the case of losing their leader. The fact that Fang Zhou had lost consciousness must also be kept secret. No one except the core figures that Ark trusted could get in touch with it. If the central government knew that Yeji had temporarily lost Ark, there was no guarantee that they would not try their best to bite them like mad dogs. Even Tucker's weak perception of Fang Zhou was approaching disappearance as time passed. If this continued, the possibility of Fang Zhou waking up would become smaller and smaller. Even in this situation, core members such as Rachel and Shi Xiang never thought of changing their leader. They all believed that only Fang Zhou could lead them. But as time went on, the doctor had to intervene and check Fang Zhou's body. Her old human body might cause her to die during hibernation. Even though he knew there was little hope, the doctor needed to try other ways to see if he could wake her up and stabilize her physical condition. Because the main spirit body left, her mental activity was close to zero, which was basically a state of brain death. The doctor had no more ways to deal with this. After several tests on her physical condition, the results surprised the doctor. This is the value obtained from the third sampling. With sufficient data support, the doctor has been able to confirm it. She said with a somewhat excited tone, her body is getting closer and closer to the body value of a normal person. Fang Zhou's body not only did not collapse, but instead gradually became like an ordinary person. The inner world was out of the control of the outside world, and the sequelae of the world caused by the external invasion were slowly recovering. And the green plants and the expansion of the safe zone proved this. Fang Zhou, whose body settings were once modified by Jiang Chudu, was of course the same. She was gradually recovering with this world. This result made them all relieved. At least they no longer had to worry about Fang Zhou leaving without warning before waking up. Even though Raikiri and the others knew that the loss of her spiritual body was the most fatal. Only by keeping her body could they ensure that she had a place to go when she came back. As for Fang Xuanjiang, in the past month, the mental damage caused by Jiang Chudu had almost recovered, and his mental activity was basically at a normal level. Logically, he should have woken up long ago. But he did not wake up, and fell into a deep sleep with Fang Zhou. What's wrong with him? He should have recovered long ago. But he still lies there without waking up. Rachel couldn't help but comment, and turned to ask the doctor, what is the specific reason? The doctor also felt a little confused. His mental frequency is indeed very slightly different, but it does not affect his awakening. Finally, she came to a conclusion. He doesn't want to wake up. Not long after she finished saying this, Fang Xuanjiang's mental frequency began to fluctuate in a large range, before attracting the attention of several people. The communication equipment carried by the doctor and Lei Chia sounded a somewhat harsh beep. Prompt sound. In order to facilitate constant observation, the hibernation cabin where Fang Ark was located was connected to the communication equipment of several people who took turns to guard. And this prompt came from her hibernation cabin. Lei Chia's eyes paused after receiving the message. He didn't realize what it was for a while. The next second after he reacted, he teleported and disappeared from the spot. There were several other people who received the message like him, and they immediately dropped everything they were doing. Without exception, they all ran towards the direction where Fang Zhou was. Cold, dark, as if falling into an abyss with no end. Constantly falling. Just as the hacker said, falling into the boundary is more terrible than death. Time becomes extremely long, and all you feel is endless nothingness, which can break the human will in an instant. Fang Zhou felt it once when she went to the outside world, and now she fell into this place again. In the vast data universe, human consciousness seems so small, and countless connected data channels repel outsiders. Fang Zhou's consciousness keeps drifting in such a huge boundary, and she can't find the way home at all. Fang Zhou did not give up on finding her own world, but the long time and pain in the boundary were wearing away her spirit every moment, and she became weaker and weaker, and it was only a matter of time before she turned into countless meaningless digital codes in the boundary. In this desperate abyss, Fang Zhou could only feel countless broken consciousnesses turning into invalid data garbage, passing by her quickly. These things were telling her all the time, it was only a matter of time before you became like this. Once she had the idea of giving up, they would pounce on her like a beast and swallow her up in advance, assimilate her, and completely erase the traces of her existence. Fang Zhou should feel desperate, but she is still struggling. She knew this would be the result when she made the decision. And she would not regret her decision. But in this unbearable sense of nothingness, she could not help but feel regretful. She had not really enjoyed the fruits of victory, and had to watch them rot. As time went on, her memory became a little fuzzy, and she occasionally forgot the purpose of her wandering here. After an unknown amount of time, she felt a familiar connection in the digital codes that passed through her. The living consciousness transmitted extremely short memory fragments to her when it passed by her from a distance. The images of those flashing memory fragments were full of her. Fang Zhou suddenly woke up. It was the spiritual fragment of Fang Xuanjiang that was attached to Jiang Chudu's memory when he was erased. It followed Jiang Chudu out of the inner world. And when it was dragged back to the outer world by Fang Zhou, it fell into the boundary because it had no landing point. It was only a very small part, connected to the spiritual body that stayed in the inner world, and knew the way back. But it did not go back for a long time, absorbing the nutrients of the body to resist consumption, drifting in the endless boundary, as if looking for something, until it found Fang Zhou, who was lost in the boundary. It was taking her home. At this moment, Fang Zhou seemed to have found the direction suddenly. She recognized this spiritual fragment, and moved along with the position. It went back and forth. Its small figure passed through countless fragments, pulling the chain at the other end, moving through it with difficulty and determination. Fang Zhou's larger spiritual body approached it, cleared the resistance around it, and let it go home with peace of mind. The consciousness that was originally attached to Fang Zhou's birth gradually became stronger. It brought Fang Zhou back and crossed the long river of consciousness. The dazzling white light fell from the front, and her perception landed, breaking away from the long nothingness. She finally returned to where she came from, back to her world. Fang Zhou opened her eyes.